Arrested and charged 26-year-old Luigi Mangione for the alleged shooting of the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson after a 5-day manhunt. Beyond this specific case, what does it say about all of us that we're all so obsessed with the details of true crime? Call or text.
I'm Shirley Leung, in for Jim Browdy. Then at Sports Authority, Trenni Casey. It was a first-of-its-kind broadcast last night when the Cowboys-Bengals game aired in real time from the Simpsons universe, fully animated with commentary from Springfield's finest. We'll get Trenni's take on that story, plus NFL players who found their emotional outlet in journaling. It's all ahead on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Hurst. Israel has carried out dozens of airstrikes in recent days in Syria and has taken over a 50-year-old buffer zone along its border. The Israelis say they're defending their interests, even as they welcome the demise of Bashar al-Assad's regime, as NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports.
Before the rebels took over Damascus, the Israeli military had been targeting Iranian proxies in Syria to stop the flow of weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the Israeli action against Iranian interests paved the way for the demise of the Assad regime. But now he's worried about what comes next in Syria, so the Israeli Air Force has destroyed Syrian air defenses, missile depots, and chemical weapon sites. The Israelis have also taken over a buffer zone between the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights and Syria, including Mount Hernon. Egypt and Jordan have denounced that as a land grab. The Israelis call it a temporary move. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
26-year-old Luigi Mangione has been charged with murder in the death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in New York last week. He was also arraigned on gun and other charges in Pennsylvania, where he was apprehended with a ghost gun, fake IDs, and writings that police say link him to the murder. NPR's Brian Mann has more.
Speaking yesterday, the NYPD's chief of detectives, Joseph Kenney, said Mangione was carrying a 3-page handwritten document that may have detailed some of his motives.
We don't think that there's any specific threats to other people mentioned in that document, but it does seem that he has some ill will toward corporate America.
And Mangione's writings on social media also include one post about the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski. Mangione expresses fascination with some of Kaczynski's ideas, including the belief that political violence may be necessary.
NPR's Brian Mann. Parents of 2 minors in Texas are suing a company that develops popular chatbots over what they describe as abusive and violent responses. NPR's Bobby Allen reports.
Character AI develops chatbots popular with teenagers. They're known as companion bots. You can customize their names, avatars, and help shape the bot's personality. But a new lawsuit says the Google-backed chatbot encourages teens to carry out self-harm. And in one instance, allegedly hinted that a teen should murder his parents. The defective product lawsuit is seeking damages and asking that Character AI's bots be taken off the market. Character AI said in a statement that it is working to limit teens' exposure to sensitive or suggestive content. Google, which has invested billions into Character AI, said it does not own the AI firm and that user safety is among its top priorities. Bobby Allen, NPR News.
In California, the Franklin wildfire in Malibu has burned more than 1,800 acres and, fanned by strong winds, is forcing evacuations. Students at Pepperdine University have been ordered to shelter in place. This is NPR News.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Craig Lamolt. The Healy administration is making significant changes to the state's shelter system that are going into effect today. GBH's Trajan Warren reports.
The changes include a longer limit for short-term shelter stays, with the cap going from 5 days to 30 days. But long-term stays will be cut from 9 months to a limit of 6 months. The administration says the moves are meant to save money. Kelly Turley is with the Massachusetts Coalition for the Homeless. She says that some of the changes, like an increase in funds families can access through a rehousing program, are good. But others, like the shorter limit on long-term stays, miss the mark.
Putting arbitrary caps creates chaos not only for families themselves, but also for the providers who are partnering with families to help them in that process of exiting shelter into safe housing.
More than 4,000 families have moved through the shelter system this year. Trajan Warren, GBH News, 89.7.
The Boston-based anti-poverty agency ABCD says their annual toy drive is falling short this holiday season. The head of ABCD, Sharon Scott Chandler, says they received more than 6,500 requests from parents for toys. And right now, they're only a third of the way toward meeting that goal. She says there's considerable need for toys for children aged 10 to 12. That includes dolls, cars, Legos, board games, and puzzles.
In order to put that smile on the child's face, holiday toys really mean it goes a long way.
December 13th is the deadline for dropping off toys for the drive. Cloudy today, some drizzling rain throughout the day, a high near 40, some rain overnight, and then it's going to be warm tomorrow. The highs around 60, windy with some gusts up to 46 miles an hour. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio. I'm Boston Globe columnist Shirley Leung with former Public Safety Secretary Andrea Cabral in for Jim and Marjorie. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim and Marjorie are back here. They're here tomorrow at the library, and they're going to be here with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu for Ask the Mayor. Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Shirley. We're going to start the show with the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson and all that's ensued since he was shot in broad daylight on a Manhattan street last week. All morning, CNN has been airing photographs of the now in custody alleged shooter. His name is Luigi Mangione, with his shirt off, all the while dissecting every possible detail about his Ivy League life, his wealthy background, his online presence, since he was picked up at a Pennsylvania McDonald's after a 5-day manhunt. The swell of support for the alleged shooter online has likened him to a folk hero, a Robin Hood-style vigilante resonating with people who feel helpless against a healthcare system that many find dehumanizing and destructive. According to the Lancet Medical Journal, profit-driven healthcare causes 68,000 preventable deaths in the United States annually. United Healthcare alone profited $6 billion every quarter and used prior authorizations and AI to automatically deny and delay care for millions of Americans. Is what we're seeing the fallout from that? So are we all just projecting our own biases, delving into the psyche of an alleged killer? If he was less attractive, perhaps if he was not white, would the narrative be different? Why do we as a society love a drama-filled police chase, a courtroom thriller, a Karen Reed-style story, an O.J.-style manhunt? What does it say about all of us that we can't seem to look away? Call or text us at 877-301-8970. That's 877-301-8970. So Shirley, what do you think?
Well, I haven't been able to look away because, I write a business column for the Globe, and it's not every day. Actually, I can't remember the last time that a CEO was gunned down in broad daylight before kind of a routine, the annual investor conference in New York City, in Manhattan. So from the get-go was a story that I followed very closely, right? But then all the details, right? The way the brazen shooting him behind in the back, right? And then the way he escaped by renting a bike, and then so I've been glued. And then, but I think. I think because he's good looking, I think people paid attention. And now that he's, Ivy League, comes from a wealthy family, I don't think people can look away from this story.
Well, it is kind of interesting, your point about sort of who he is, or the fact that, it's unusual to have a CEO gunned down. I think in terms of how anesthetized we have become to all of the other killings that go on any given day in the United States of America, whether it's gang violence and people being shot, in broad daylight on very public streets, as a result of gang violence, or just general gun violence, school shootings, people shooting up public places where people gather, like theaters and markets. And the fact that we find this somewhat interesting, or more interesting because it's a CEO, that probably deserves a little bit of a deep dive as well. One of the first things that I heard reported was the question around Brian Thompson sort of walking by himself was, where's his security?
Right.
Regular people don't have security. Kids don't have security from school shooters. And it does bring back the issue around access to guns. This was a ghost gun.
Yeah.
We've actually taken some steps in Massachusetts to outlaw ghost guns, but in lots of other places, the pushback to outlawing any kind of a gun, and for people who don't know, ghost guns are guns without serial numbers that are sort of homemade guns. This one came from a 3D printer. The pushback from the gun lobby and others who put lots of money in our politicians' pockets is, you don't, no matter how a person gains a weapon, you never stand in their way of getting it. Well, maybe this will revive that debate as well.
I mean, we should care about every murder. You're right. And we don't. And in this case, it was just a national manhunt. It was on TV all the time. Also, there was a vigilante element to it.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's absolutely right.
And because so many people hate their health care, feel like they're screwed by them. And this is a way to get back at United Healthcare, the biggest healthcare company I believe in the country. We don't know the exact connection, right, between Luigi and United Healthcare, if there is any connection. I mean, one thing I was struck by is if we could play a little sound from Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Luigi was picked up at a McDonald's yesterday afternoon. I thought it was really important what Shapiro said at the press conference condemning the online celebrations of the shooter.
In a civil society, we are all less safe when ideologues engage in vigilante justice. In some dark corners, this killer is being hailed as a hero. Hear me on this. He is no hero.
It's true. No, it's absolutely true. I mean, and we talked about this a little bit with Brian McGrory yesterday. I sort of brought up the people who stand on the bridges and along the highway cheering O.J. Simpson's Bronco as it sort of sped down the highway. O.J. Simpson, they didn't know him. He didn't know them. It's not like he's ever done anything for them. But to your point, it's a pushback against the frustration that people feel. I think the problem is that believing that cheering for something like this makes your situation better. It may make you feel better in the moment, but it doesn't actually change anything. There are ways to do that that don't involve waiting for someone to walk by you on a public street and pointing a gun with a silencer at his back and shooting him. Right. Whatever you think about Brian Thompson or the kind of job that he does, because it's as much of a slippery slope for us as regular people as it is for anybody else.
That's
and,
right.
It drags you down with it.
Let's go to Matt and from Jamaica Plain.
In JP. Hi, Matt.
Hey, good morning. I think both of you have hit on some really excellent points already this morning. I think for me, while this act obviously is grotesque, immoral, illegal, not okay, I think it was Andrea who just kind of pointed out there are things to do to change healthcare policy or change policy around insurance. But those things, I think people just rightfully perceive those things to be outrageously complex, time-consuming, long-term things that may or may not have actual impacts. And like I said, while this is a terrible act, I think for a lot of people, it's kind of a very deep-seated kind of in the id wish fulfillment thing where they're just I can't send another letter to my insurance company. I can't have another email fight with my insurance company. But this guy, just kind of did the most outrageous thing that I could possibly imagine. And in some deep, dark way that feels cathartic to people. Again, not that that's okay, but I think that's what's drawing some of the attention to the topic.
I think you're right, Matt. I think I think it's a really good point, and I think you're right. I also think, though, that, it seems sort of overly simplistic. We say to people, we try to tell people how important their vote is or how important it is to sort of get involved. At the end of the day, people's frustration can be laid at the feet, for the most part, of the people they elect to represent them who don't represent them. Mm-hmm. Healthcare companies don't get to the point where they make this kind of money without a lot of help.
I want to read something from an anonymous texter because I had the same thought. This person says, we watch for a lot of reasons because a lot of us feel the same way, but we also have been brought up on watching a cop show and paying attention until they wrap it up in an hour. that's because if you think about in the beginning, I mean, just the way the CEO was killed and the manhunt, it was right out of like a movie.
It was Law and Order.
Right,
yeah.
Law and Order, but also like a 6-part, Netflix series that that I've just binged over the weekend. It was the same. You couldn't stop watching it
because of the cameras. The fact that the cameras recorded it in real time made it more like any one of a dozen TV shows you could watch at any given time. And I remember that I did the show, my regular Thursday segment, right after the shooting happened, and Jim's question was, why is it taking so long to find this guy? Well, part of that is us becoming completely accustomed to things being wrapped up very, very, very quickly.
That's right.
In situations like this, reality is a little different. Paula from Hingham says, I'm sorry, that you just read the one from Paula from Hingham.
Oh, no, we didn't.
Oh, okay.
That's new.
Paula from Hingham says, we wring our hands over the person who shot the CEO, and if we're spending too much time on him, how about we ask ourselves why so much time is spent on finding the killer of a CEO, but so little time is spent on someone who is homeless or poor? Manhunts only seem to happen when the rich get killed. Well,
that's true too.
It's true. I mean, the same thing goes for who we look for when they're missing. There was the whole thing between Gabby Petito being missing and this sort of national manhunt to find her boyfriend, and then the
woman in Duxbury, right? Was it Duxbury? The woman in Duxbury. What's the case?
No,
there was another case.
The Brian Walsh case?
Yes, Brian Walsh case.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
The amount of attention that we pay. Meanwhile, Indigenous women have been missing and murdered,
right.
For decades and decades. Women of color, it's a problem. So listen, call us or text us. Let us know how you feel about it. 877-301-8970.
Should we go to Maria in Warwick?
Warwick, Rhode Island. Hello, Maria.
Hello there. Good morning.
Good morning.
I just think that we're paying attention to this because so many of us are really suffering at the hands of insurance companies, and our government doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. In fact, they endorse it and protect it, and people are at their wits' end. And I just think that this person who had the courage to do something, however horrendous it was, is shining a light on this major problem we have in our country, which doesn't look like it's ever going to be solved. I mean, how could it be solved? How could we get rid of for-profit health care in this country? It's impossible. There would have to be a revolution as far as I'm concerned. Any of these insurance companies are not going to be willing to give up the billions of dollars of profit they're making.
Well,
I just think this shines a light on this huge problem we have in our country right now.
I don't disagree with you at all, Maria, that it's a huge problem. But that's why I was making the point with Matt, who called earlier, about who you vote for. If you're voting for people who are taking huge amounts of money into their campaigns from insurance companies and healthcare companies, that's who they're really going to represent. And I know people have a lot to pay attention to, but there should be, if that's what it is for you, that the healthcare system needs this reform, you can't vote for the people who are protecting it and expect anything to change.
Maria, why do you say it was courageous? I mean,
he shot him in the back.
He shot him in the back. That's not courage.
No, it's not. But he did something pretty outrageous. Maybe that was the wrong word to use, but I just think that people are at their wits' end, and I don't know. I guess that was the wrong word. I certainly don't encourage anything like that, but I don't see how this can be solved because we're not being told the truth. People we vote for are not necessarily the right people to do the job, and we're not getting the right information. The public's not being educated. It just seems like an insurmountable problem. But I'm certainly not saying that he did the right thing.
Yeah. Thanks, Maria.
No, but I do think she makes a really good point about people lose empathy when they're in so much pain themselves. They're not going to, it's very difficult to look at somebody who symbolizes that degree of wealth and profit when you're suffering and feel empathy for them.
So I want to read another text, anonymous texter. As someone who watches Law and Order, the first 48, what is the first 48?
The first 48 is a show.
Is that a show? Okay, cold case files, forensic files, and every documentary you can think of. The American public is desensitized to some aspects of murders. It doesn't help showing the shooter shirtless. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a GoFundMe and his entire legal bill is covered by it. I think that could be
That's
the case.
entirely possible.
Yes,
that is absolutely entirely. And then I think lawyers may come out of the woodwork to represent him.
That's right.
At trial. So let's take a quick break, but hopefully Bethany in the car will still be there when we come back and we can talk to her.
Yeah, so more of our calls and texts after this short break. And if you want to call or text, it's 877-301-8970. Call or text. You're listening to Boston Public Radio on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Part of the GBH News Equity and Justice Unit.
Disability had its own civil rights movement back in the 1970s that's still ongoing today.
Senior digital producer Megan Smith.
And I think there's a lot of education still to be done about that movement as a civil rights issue. There's still so much work to be done on transportation, housing, employment, that the disability community wants to be at the forefront of these conversations about diversity, inclusion, and equity.
Elevating issues of equity and justice. GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Cure Alzheimer's Fund, which supports vital scientific research into the causes of Alzheimer's disease, because research is the only path to a cure. Learn more at curealz.org. And the Bach Center, presenting Anthony Williams's Urban Nutcracker, a holiday classic reimagined for the city you love, celebrating diversity through the art of dance. At the Bach Center Schubert Theater, December 14th through the 22nd. Tickets at bachcenter.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Andrea Cabral, here with Shirley Leung, broadcasting live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim and Marjorie will be back here at the library tomorrow with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the breathless media coverage around the alleged United Healthcare CEO shooter Luigi Mangione, now in police custody. Are we all just obsessed with him because he's a young, white, Ivy League, attractive male? Or is there something more to this? So a few questions for all of you at 877-301-8970 to call or text. What do you make of the romanticization, that's tough to say.
It's tough.
Of a murderer.
I would have skipped it.
Right, the glamorization of a murderer. Why do we as a society love a drama-filled police chase, a courtroom thriller, a Karen Reed-style story, an O.J.-style manhunt? And actually, now that I think of it, more importantly, why do we seek to get personally involved in it one way or the other, and in some cases even build community around it? What does it say about all of us that we can't seem to look away from this or any other story like it? All of its complex details, from the salacious to the serious. Give us a call or text us at 877-301-8970. That's 877-301-8970. And Shirley, from your mouth to the internet's ear, right after you said what you said before we took a break, tell us what happened.
So we got a note from our producers saying that GoFundMe has already shut down multiple pages created to support the accused murderer of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. That was a GoFundMe spokesperson told The Independent earlier today. And Andrew, you may remember Amazon also there were people trying to create merchandise around those bullets, right? Deny,
depose, defend.
Deny, defend, depose. And people were making T-shirts, and Amazon shut those down as well. So we should go to Bethany.
Bethany stayed on the line. Thank you, Bethany, for staying on the line. We appreciate your patience and your call. What do you want to tell us?
So first of all, I wanted to share the fact that I do not support that he was shot. However, I have to share, as the mother of a medically fragile 29-year-old, for many of us who have watched our children or parents endure lifelong chronic illnesses, there is an aspect of this which hits home so hard. And I will just give one example. When my daughter was 1 year old, she had failure to thrive. And she required having a G-tube placed. Everything was approved by health insurance. The day after the G-tube was placed, the nurse from the insurance company walked in. And, of course, we're all excited. My child, who already has multiple medical conditions, is developmentally delayed, desperately needs nutrition, is finally going to get the nutrition that she can get because she is unable to. And she looked at me and said, just wanted to confirm that you understand the internal fees, which is what is pumped through the G-tube, are not covered by the health insurance. And walked out.
Wow.
And the coldness of what the insurance company was doing and the brutalness of what the insurance company was doing, it's indescribable what you feel as a parent. And we had to spend the next week in the hospital figuring out how it was going to be paid for. We were very lucky. We did an emergency application to Mass Health. Keep in mind, many states do not have, always forget Medicaid. Mass Health is fantastic. It's a pain in the butt, but it's fantastic. Many states don't have such a good system, and we were very, very, very lucky. But at that moment, when that representative of that insurance company said that to us, if I could have imploded, I probably would have. And that can't be forgotten. I think this has brought up something in our country that is happening to many people. Still, assassinating someone is not okay.
No, Bethany, I mean, your point is well taken. And Maria's before you was well taken. I think we quibbled with it, with calling it necessarily courageous, especially since we don't exactly know what Mangioni's motivation was at this point. But I think you make a good point, and I also think that we're pretty clear that people don't mind if the messenger is imperfect. What they're focusing on is the message, and the message that it sends about the kind of pain that people are in. So I don't necessarily disagree with your point. I think I'm trying to find ways that short of murder, people can have more agency around what is happening to them. And by the way, for people who were making the assumption that I was only talking about Republicans taking money from the insurance company or from the healthcare industry, I never mentioned a single political party. I'm talking about people voting for people who are going to represent them, regardless of party, who are not going to represent the people who put money in their pockets. Greg from Milton, how are you?
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
A couple of quick things. You had made the comment there's other ways of handling this than murder. There isn't. And I'm not saying that they should murder. But you make it sound like, you should have picked up the phone and dealt with them. It's just like the woman before me said. The nurse walked in and said, this isn't going to be covered, and walked out. There's people I believe are just getting, fed up where it's above them to control their actions.
So what do you suggest? What do you suggest, Greg? If you're saying that you don't, there isn't any other answer other than murder, but you're not advocating murder. What are you actually? If something has to change, how does that happen?
Question. It's a very tough question. If something does have to change, I think you got to look at insurance companies as a company. Have to look at money as being more important than the health of their customers.
Though they certainly do. There's no question about that.
And when somebody pays their insurance bill, in their mind, they're thinking, I'm paying for insurance to take care of me in case I get sick. That's really not the truth.
Well, I'm hoping out of this that the insurance companies I mean, Andrea, think about all the calls that we've had. A lot of people are saying...
And a lot of texts.
A lot of texts saying that, the health insurance companies, they're the bad guys too.
Right.
And something needs to be done. And I'm hoping that the health insurance companies will listen to this reaction and maybe look at themselves. I know it's a little Pollyannish on my part, but, you can't go around just shooting CEOs. I'm hoping for change.
But to Greg's point, the point of a lot of the texters that we're seeing, they're saying they deserve it. There is sort of a tacit, not that people are individually advocating for it, but I think the point is being made pretty strongly from what we're seeing just on this show today, that nothing else gets their attention.
Right.
And that people genuinely believe that nothing. I mean, I think yesterday, I forget who it was that mentioned it. And maybe it was something I saw on TV after the show, but there's a French Revolution aspect to this.
Oh, that was me.
Oh, that was you. Right, that was you.
Someone
right.
else was telling me that.
That was what the French Revolution was about. The off with their heads kind of, was a response to let them eat cake.
Yes, exactly.
And so that's what I think a lot of people are saying. But to your point, the issue is whether or not there is anyone listening before it gets to that point.
Right. We had a good text from Steve in Marlborough who says, over the past 2 years, we have all watched the justice system fail to stop rich white men. So that is why this Luigi had to resort to what he didn't trust the system. He didn't trust the system,
And he actually is a wealthy white guy.
Right.
Jane from Brookline. Hi, how are you? Thank you for your call.
Oh, thank you. Long-time listener. I'm a healthcare clinician. I've had a private practice for many years, and I've treated a variety of different kinds of patients with all sorts of different insurances. And the one insurance that I often say to my patients, please make sure you call and check that I'm in your network. And when they say I am, go ahead and make sure you get the date and the time of the call where someone actually told the subscriber, the insured, that yes, you're covered.
Good advice.
Then what happens is, and this is because of the experiences that I've had with United Healthcare. Then what happens is they get denied. And it's happened more and more with processing of their bills through my billing agency. And then it's just a giant fiasco. And I don't think that there is a lot of attention about this because this is an Ivy League guy. I think what it is this was a smart kid that had got a great education. It sounds like he also had a medical issue, probably had some surgery. Maybe he was over 26 and he had to pay for it. And here he just saw the discrepancy between him applying for this coverage based on a procedure he had and having it be denied, and then looking at the economics of how much money, number one, the CEO was making. And so I'm hoping two things. I was a big Bernie Sanders fan 4 years ago, and I believe that insurance is a right, not a privilege, number one. And I think that there should be just as much coverage about United Healthcare, like Spotlight needs to take a look at it. And look at all of these other insurance companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield that was trying to, cut down on how much anesthesia time they would give certain patients.
It's a good idea.
It's a good idea, Jane. Thank you.
I'd like to see that kind of coverage.
It's been very sad for me because you can see very reasonable people and also people of reasonable incomes, and they get screwed. And then it's when it happens to those people that they really realize how dysfunctional the insurance coverage is in this country.
Well, Jane, I think you raise a really good point, and I think you can say both things. Like one of our texters, Ann from Medway, says no murder, even in self-defense, can be dismissed. She's questioning whether or not, justice is blind. After the full acquittal, she mentions the subway strangler Penny from yesterday. You can cover both things. You can say it is wrong, unequivocally wrong, to murder a person in broad daylight. And we're smart enough people that we can also look at the way people are feeling around this, dissect their reactions, and try to do something about the source of that pain as well.
I just hope that they'll start covering sort of the inside workings of how United Healthcare operates.
Yeah. That does sound like a Frontline show or a ProPublica piece, a deep dive, a Guardian piece. And they may have done some things on this already. We should probably pull those up and see what the coverage has been.
Well, Stat News, the sister publication of the Boston Globe, I mean, I think they were Pulitzer Prize finalists this year, and I think it was for their coverage of United Healthcare using AI to deny claims. And so...
and then what happens with that? Where's the political pressure to hold them to task in terms of how they're regulated and so forth?
All right, do we have time for one very quick, 30 seconds with Patty from Lowell? 30 seconds.
I'll make it quick. Thank you. I love your show. I'm calling because in the setup of all these GoFundMe, people are forgetting there are faces to the people who are killed in these crimes. This morning, our president, who we elected, released a perfume fragrance titled Fight, Fight, Fight. That's the leadership. That's where our country is going. And I'm heartbroken over that.
Wait a minute. Trump is selling a cologne called Fight, Fight, Fight?
It was released in Paris this morning.
He's got a lot of merch. He's making a lot of money off of merch. But you're right. It's the mentality. It's part of we're kind of trained to fight.
Right. But the violence that evokes and the setting us against each other is not a good thing.
All right, so we're out of time right now, but we will come back to Luigi with Sue O'Connell later in the show. But coming up after this quick break, Trenni Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston, is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Rebel groups are now in control of Syria, where people want basic services and normalcy.
Electricity, gas, fuel. We can send our kids back to school.
I'm Carol Hills, creating a new government in the wake of a dictatorship. The latest from Syria and the day's top global news, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Trustees, presenting Winterlights, a celebration of seasonal sparkle, with light displays in Stockbridge, North Andover, and Canton, Massachusetts. Advance tickets required. More at thetrustees.org/winterlights. And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Andrea Cabral is here. That's me. Shirley Leung is here. That's her. In for Jim and Marjorie. Jim and Marjorie are going to be back at the BPL tomorrow with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu for their December edition of Ask the Mayor. Our text prompt of the day at 877-8970 is all about your favorite holiday cookies. Are you a gingerbread purist, a pecan praline traditionalist, a shortbread person? Does it have to be sandy? Do you like the sablays? I don't know. I watch the cookie challenge show. Or are you delving into the creative annals of the New York Times cooking section to find the latest matcha sesame recipe that will dazzle? What are your go-to cookies and your avant-garde experiments? Text us your thoughts at 877-301-8970, and we'll read them a little bit before 1 o'clock. We're joined now at the BPL desk by Trenni Casey, an anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston, and a BPR contributor. Hi, Trenni.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Trenni.
How is frosted sugar cookie not on that list?
I know.
That was in the earlier.
Yeah,
that was in my
earlier one.
but I had to add it. Cut out sugar cookies. That's classic.
The best.
So not the Pillsbury,
sugar,
not
like
the Pillsbury
sugar on
one?
sugar. No, you got to make it from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah, got to roll the dough,
cutouts,
cut them out,
snowflakes,
and then poorly decorate them.
That's right.
Okay.
So, all right. So we're going to do a little more serious topic now, but we want to talk about CTE.
Yeah.
This is this new study from Boston University's CTE Center showing how it's not just NFL players, but also NHL players who are also prone to this traumatic brain injuries. I think the study showed that 18 of the 19 NHL players whose brains were studied after death were discovered to have CTE. So were you surprised by these results?
No, not at all. In fact, I've sort of been like quietly preaching for years that while the NFL, rightfully so, gets most of the attention around CTE, I mean, it's the most popular sport in the United States by far. And I would say hockey, of the core four, which of course are football, basketball, baseball, and hockey's probably still kind of at the bottom. It's more of a niche sport. It's not something you just pick up and play in your driveway. And so I think it's sort of gone underreported that these guys suffer some big hits and concussions, in particular the enforcers. An enforcer is just a fancy way of saying a fighter. I mean, fighting in hockey is still completely legal. And in this article, they highlight the difference between those guys who are those big burly guys who aren't the goal scorers. They're not the finesse players. They're the ones who, if you hit back in the day, if you hit David Pastrnak, then, somebody goes in and kind of makes up for it on behalf of David Pastrnak, because you don't need Pasta getting hurt because he scores your goals. So maybe your fourth line defenseman or third line defenseman goes in there and dusts it up a little bit. It has been disappointing to me that there have been hockey purists, but also the NHL, who have stood by this idea that fighting is needed in hockey. It is not allowed in women's hockey. It's not allowed at the youth level. Checking, I will say this about hockey. At the youth levels, they have mandated that hard checks, there's an age range. I believe it starts at 12. Otherwise, it's more, you're sort of skating, you're not checking into the boards like you do at higher levels, which is similar, I think, to playing flag football, before you hit a certain age to sort of limit that. But it says in this, again, just like football, the earlier you start, the more competitive you are, the more repetitive hits you take, the better chance you have of developing CTE.
And so the study does look at even kids playing these sports in middle school and high school.
Yeah.
And what's troubling is that school sports are such a part of how our kids grow up. Boys' sports and girls' sports. But the ones that tend to be more physical, although women's rugby can be fairly physical, lacrosse can be fairly physical.
Well, we also had a
physical
story a couple weeks ago about cheerleading. Cheerleading, you get a ton of concussions in cheerleading, which is primarily seen as a female sport, a women's sport. So there's some danger there too. But yes, hockey is up there.
How long do you think it's going to take for this level, the findings of this kind of study, to seep into the consciousness of parents who, before they make maybe different choices around. It's very difficult, and I think Shirley knows this firsthand. Difficult to say no to your child when they want to play.
Does your son or daughter play hockey?
Oh, no, but he wanted to play tackle football. He's 11, and I was telling Andrea earlier, he's a basketball kid, but half the basketball team plays tackle football, so he begged me to sign up this season. And so I signed him up, but literally I tossed and turned like all the way till, the beginning of the season. And I actually had a chance to have Chris Nowinski, who's one of the founders of the BU CTE Center, on my podcast. And I said, what do you think? And he's like, if you love your son, you do not let him play tackle football before high school. His brain is not fully developed. And I said, well, what do I do? He's like, you have to find a way to convince him not to do it. So I bribed him.
As all good parents do.
Yeah, I gave him cash, and I gave him like a new Nike Tech
Do you have
sweatshirt.
flag football in your town?
We do, and so maybe next year we'll do flag football. And so, but I literally, it brought tears to my eyes just thinking about begging him, and I think he relented when I was just throwing out ideas. I said, I will give you, he's like, what will it take, Mom? I was like, I'll give you $1 million. And then I think once I said that, he's like, oh, she's serious. She really does not want me to do this.
Are you paying that in installments?
No.
Does it come out of your paycheck?
$1 million became $100.
It's hard,
and
though.
he was happy. But I have to tell you, the parents are split. I guess we're saying half the parents, because of peer pressure, they're playing, and then half the parents are like, good for you. Like, we're with you,
Well, and there are, I think also parents parents who have sort of convinced themselves that if your son or daughter plays tackle football early and they learn the proper way to tackle, if they're learning these skills early rather than late, then somehow you're protecting them. Personally, I don't buy it. I think that if you're, even if it's my nephew is 9 going on 10. He plays flag football. That's what all the kids in his neighborhood in Wisconsin play. And my sister and brother-in-law were adamant against him playing any form of tackle football. He was recently diagnosed with a degenerative eye disease that may prevent him from playing tackle anyway. That might be an easy way to get him out of it. But this summer when I saw them, they had sort of relented and said, well, he really wants to play. And, it starts at this age or whatever. And I was like, oh, God, please don't do it. But hockey, I think, is a little harder. I mean, I think all sports are difficult, right? And I think I think the problem is that it's the longevity of how long you play, right? So like my husband played hockey as a kid, and then he played in high school, but then he stopped. Like he doesn't even play, men's pickup league anymore. So the shorter duration of any of these sports, I think, lessens the long-term impact.
The fewer times your head knocks against your skull.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's really incumbent on the pro leagues to take leadership on this and say there is no fighting in, maybe all the way up then to college hockey. There is no board checking until you're maybe, at least in high school hockey, don't maybe set it at 12. I mean, brains actually, to the best of my knowledge, and please, if you're a doctor, correct me on this, but a friend of mine who's a psychologist, I think she said your brain isn't done developing until you're about 25 years old.
That's true.
So there's really no good
That's
time.
why reform in juvenile criminal law has taken place, because you don't have the capacity to form the kinds of judgments you would as an older adult.
It's really hard because there are benefits to team sports, right? There are benefits of leadership and being part of a team, learning how to win, learning how to lose, learning how to be a leader, maybe coming out of your shell, the athleticism. There's not gym class anymore, and the gym class that there is kind of crummy. So the athletic, getting kids off the couch, especially now in this day and age, every kid's got, a phone and a Nintendo, whatever they're called. And there's this thing called Roblox my nephew wants. I don't know what that is, but I got to get a gift card for it.
Yes.
And so there are benefits, but it's like, do the benefits outweigh the risks if you're talking about long-term possible brain damage? And is this why there's a rise in mental health issues among kids? And it's so hard to study. And violence. It's just, there has to be a sort of, I guess to Chris Nowinski's point, there maybe has to be a common ground, like at least high school, when, your little tiny brain isn't jogging around in there. Because I think even with, you asked how long it would take, Andrea, I don't know that it'll ever go away. I think there will always be parents who can explain away the risks. And two, to be quite honest, I think there will always be parents who are sort of desperate, who need their kids. They need their kids to be in an after-school program because they can't afford after-school daycare or they can't afford college. So they need college scholarships. We talked about this last week, and Jim was a little dismissive of it, but if you can't afford to put your kid through college, if you can get them a college scholarship, that drives a lot of these decisions, and that's a real
That's why
issue.
It's incumbent upon the institutions and the coaches to look out for them.
Well, Chris was telling me some states are trying to pass laws to kind of raise the age. Maybe you can't play tackle football until a certain age or something like that.
I would love to see that happen. I think it's always going to be state by state, right? It's never going to happen it certainly now isn't going to happen on a federal level.
Not on a federal level.
But I would love to see the state of Massachusetts take a lead on that. Because this is where BU is. This is where this concussion center is. Where we are a leader in healthcare, and there's nothing more important than the health of our children.
Okay, Trenni. So from that to this, so Juan Soto decided to
kids play baseball. There you go. Don't have your kid play hockey. Have your kid be a good baseball.
Goes to the Mets. It's a 15-year, it's $765 million mega deal. When you break it down, it's about $51 million a year. But the signing bonus is $75 million of that, $765 million of that. What do you think of this?
I mean, listen, the Mets have a ton of money, and I was reading an article today, I think in maybe my Axios or The Athletic, one of the sports, I get like a million, newsletters every morning, and they were talking about that this is not going to hurt the Mets financially, that the Mets made $400 million last year.
That's insane.
And that adding him, so this is a team broke my heart. They beat my Brewers in the first round of the wild card of the playoffs on a ninth inning home run, and now they've added Juan Soto. So this is a team that I believe made it to either the second round, or I don't think they made the LCS. I kind of stopped paying attention once the Brewers were out. But this is a team that's on the rise and that has a lot of money. I mean, Steve Cohen has deep pockets. He's a hedge fund guy. And that just him being there alone, being in the New York market, is going to drive ticket sales, ad sales. Their games are going to be on more network television than they probably were last year. You get bonus money every time you make the postseason. So if he meets or exceeds expectations for this team and you add him to this already very potent lineup, you're talking about probably maybe $100 or $200 more million being brought in. That covers his salary for a couple of years. Like, this is actually, I know it sounds wild, but it's not. It doesn't sound like it's a terrible investment. Like, I would think Steve Cohen would know a thing or two about.
Right.
I think it's a good investment.
Insane amount of money just generally that we're talking about this for someone's ability to throw
hit
a ball or hit a ball or catch a ball.
I know.
But it's insane because someone's willing to pay for it. I mean, there was a bidding war for him, right?
Yes, the Red Sox were in that bidding war.
Right.
There were rumors that the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Dodgers, and the Mets were all in at least $700 million, and that the Mets made it very clear from the start that they would go $50 million over what anybody else asked. And according to reports, and I trust Alex Spear of the Boston Globe, but he reported just late last week that the Red Sox had requested a second meeting with Scott Boras, who is his agent, a very well-known hard bargaining agent in baseball, requested a second meeting to try, I think, and see what they could do. But it kind of sounds like there was nothing they could have done to bring him here. So now the question for the Red Sox is, well, you had $700 million to spend on Juan Soto.
That's right.
How are you going to spend that $700 million now? Because there's still good players out there that you can go out and get. But now you're in competition with all of those teams that tried to sign Juan Soto.
I mean, I assume he didn't want to come to the Red Sox because he wants to go to the World Series. He wants to win a World Series.
Well,
right? He wants to go to the playoffs with the Mets.
It's interesting you say that because you think back in the day. If you were a ball player, you wanted to play for the Boston Red Sox. This was a team that routinely was in the postseason, routinely won World Series. If you got a deal here, you got all of those extra. You basically was like being a New York Yankee, right, or an LA Dodger, because you were on
now
billboards.
It's the Mets, right?
Now it's the Mets. And the Red Sox, one of the questions, at least that was reported after their first meeting out in California, one of the questions that Juan Soto wanted to know was, well, what are your facilities like? What is your farm system? What is your commitment to winning? Because the Red Sox have not shown a commitment to winning, and it's starting to, I think, have a little bit of a trickle-down effect.
Wow. So I want to talk a little bit about White Stadium. This is a bombshell of a story from my colleague Michael Silverman, who's reporting this morning. Great reporter. Yeah, he's reporting this morning that he's uncovered some court documents about Boss Nation, which is the new women's soccer league here. They're supposed to start their season in 2026. But White Stadium in Franklin Park is where they want their home stadium. It needs to be renovated, but now there's a legal case which could delay the renovation of White Stadium and could also delay potentially the launch of the soccer team. So what do you make of the stadium debacle?
Well, I think, Shirley, that your column, I believe it was late 2 weeks ago, maybe right before Thanksgiving, that maybe Boss Nation and the Reds should just play in the same stadium is sounding like a better and better idea with every passing day. So there just seems to be a push, I believe, it's like a conservancy in Jamaica Plain.
The Emerald
Necklace
and residents. They have filed suit, and they want. There's a hearing today in court
to extend the delay.
To delay, because they were supposed to break ground on this stadium late fall.
Now
we're a week from the start of winter, right? So they haven't broken ground. We all know it takes a while for construction to be completed, and you want it to be done the right way. It's also going to be used by Boston Public Schools, and in the interim, it sounds like Boss Nation may have to play at BU, at their soccer stadium, in their inaugural season. But I think now is a perfect time maybe for Boss Nation to sit down with the Kraft family and say, hey, you know what? Maybe this is an opportunity. Maybe this delay is an opportunity for us to work together and have one soccer stadium
in Everett.
Everett for everybody to use. And then I don't know if it was your suggestion, if you heard it from someone, but to take to not then abandon White Stadium, but take that money that they are going to have to put back into the community for being granted the land rights in Everett and put it back into this for students, right? Make White Stadium a great place for all of BPS kids to use, as opposed to having these two separate things. It's just, it's starting to feel like this is a mess, and it's too bad because, women's professional soccer is wildly popular.
Yeah. More popular than men's.
Right. More popular than men's. Right. High-level women's soccer, as we know, the United States has been a powerhouse for years. They drew record crowds, record ratings this year for the NWSL final. And there's a lot of anticipation and excitement. When I told my niece, she's a 14-year-old who loves soccer, that we were getting a professional soccer team, she's like, oh my gosh, I want to come out that first season. Can I come to the first game? I think there's a lot of excitement around it. And let's be honest, when you're playing in a college stadium for the first year, it sort of dampens everything. It's not your own, and then you have the whole naming rights, and it's just kind of been a tough rollout. So I wonder if maybe in 2025 they start fresh. New stadium, new name, new rollout. I'm a big fan of the Boston Coven. That's my Coven. I don't know who. I cannot take credit for this. I say this every time on this show.
I like that.
The Witches of Salem, the Boston
That's
Coven.
great.
That
is
a great idea. I am not taking any credit. I think I heard it on a sports talk radio show, but I was like, that is brilliant.
Wow.
It's a brilliant
But you
name.
also know how things work in the state of Massachusetts, and most particularly in Boston. So it becomes who has dug their heels in, the deeper, like who's willing to sort of back off first and sort of say, this might actually be a good idea. And that may or may not happen. I mean, it's all, at the end of the day, it always comes down to the politics of it.
Right. And who's to say the Everett Stadium doesn't get delayed from some of the same reasons, and everything is pushed back.
You're right. Somebody sees an opportunity to sort of make hay with something like that.
But guess who's here tomorrow to talk about it?
Mayor
Wu is here. Maybe that's a question for Jim and Marjorie.
They will absolutely ask her about that.
One last question about the White Stadium before we move on. So how important is it my sense is that the women's team wanted a stadium to call their own. How important is that?
I mean, obviously it's important to them, right? Because they are pushing for it. Personally, I don't see it. Like the Celtics and the Bruins share an arena. This is the one thing, though, and you know this, Shirley, because you're a business reporter. When you share an arena, whoever has the primary rights to it also gets the revenue. So on that side, it might be important for Boss Nation to have their own soccer-specific
and that's
stadium.
Why they want right.
Because then they'll get all the concessions, the merchandise, where if they don't financially kick in as much or even close to what, say, the Kraft family can for the proposed stadium in Everett, then that money might go to the Revs instead, and then you're missing out on a huge revenue stream. So that might be, and that would be my guess at what might be the big driver as to why they want two separate stadiums.
So, Trenni, a guy by the name of Adam Kilgore had a very interesting article about I don't know if it's a rise in the number of NFL players doing this, or somebody's just recently found out that NFL players have been doing this. NFL players journaling, putting their thoughts down on paper to sort of manage the stresses that they feel, the difficulties. Some of them, have therapists, and they sort of talk about therapy. They talk about their own contract negotiations coming out of meetings and what happens with that. And I read this and I thought to myself, this is a really great thing. I'm really glad this article was written. What do you think? Just give us like a quick, 60-second. What do you think about them doing it?
I think it's fantastic because it speaks to the importance of mental health and how much it's changed in the landscape of sports, particularly around male athletes. I think women have always been very open with their feelings, but to have big, burly football players talking about how they're journaling their feelings to work through stress and anger and stress management, I think it's huge. I think it's also great just because the NFL is not tampering down on these things anymore. They're letting these guys be themselves and understanding that mental health is really important.
Yeah. Anyways, well, Trenni, it's always great to see you and speak with you.
Thank you, Trenni.
Trenni Casey is an anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston, a BPR contributor. Coming up after the noon news, local woman and our media maven, Sue O'Connell, is here. She'll give us her thoughts on Luigi Mangione. You're listening
to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Brown University pre-college programs, where academically motivated high school students can experience college life, nurture their diverse interests, and make new friends. Applications for summer 2025 open January 15th. precollege.brown.edu. Frontline investigates the deadliest mass shooting in Maine history and examines the missed opportunities to prevent the tragedy in Lewiston. Watch Breakdown in Maine, tonight at 10 on GBH2.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
I'm Andrea Cabral, in for Jim Braude. Ahead on hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library, it's media maven and local woman Sue O'Connell on the real-world Boston contestant turned Fox News commentator, turned congressman, turned Donald Trump nominee, Sean Duffy. What reality TV horror show do we all live in? Sue's here to explain.
I'm Shirley Leung, in for Marjorie Egan. Dumpling Daughter founder Nadia Spellman and Clarke's Cakes and Cookies, Karen Clarke, are here filling cutout sugar cookies. Or do you like to experiment? Text us your holiday cookie secrets next on the second hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Court documents reveal New York prosecutors charged Luigi Mangione last night with murder and other crimes in the fatal shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson last week. The 26-year-old Mangione is being held without bail in Pennsylvania. A day after the Ivy League graduate was arrested and arraigned, he's expected to be extradited to New York. Handwritten pages were found in the suspect's possession. The New York City Police Department's chief of detectives, Joseph Kenney, says he read them.
He's frustrated with the healthcare system in the United States. Specifically, he states how we are the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet the life expectancy of an American is ranked 42 in the world.
A McDonald's customer in Altoona recognized Mangione and alerted an employee who tipped off authorities. According to multiple media reports, Mangione comes from a prominent Baltimore family, one of whom is a Republican member of the Maryland House of Delegates. Well, for the first time in Israel's history, a sitting prime minister testified today as a defendant in court. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has taken the witness stand to testify in his corruption trial for the first time after more than 4 years of court proceedings. NPR's Daniel Estrin has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Other public servants in Israel and a former prime minister have resigned when charged with crimes. Netanyahu is the exception. He's charged with bribery, fraud, and breach of trust for allegedly advancing the business interests of media moguls and a Hollywood producer in exchange for cigars, champagne, and positive press coverage. In his opening testimony, he said the charges were, quote, an ocean of absurdity. He said he does not live a lavish life and works out of national, not personal interests to defend Israel. He said the momentous events in Syria, where Israel is bombing Syrian military targets, means his aides may need to pass him notes. They did, and the trial paused for a couple of minutes. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, the Tel Aviv courthouse.
In these final weeks of his presidency, President Biden's trying to get credit for rebuilding the economy. NPR's Asma Khalid reports this follows a broad economic discontent many voters expressed in the election.
In remarks today, he intends to lay out how his administration delivered a strong recovery from the pandemic. The White House points out that during the Biden presidency, more than 16 million jobs were created, and they had the lowest average unemployment rate of any administration in the last 50 years. Hundreds of billions of dollars were also invested in clean energy and American manufacturing, an industrial policy the country hasn't seen in decades. But it will take years to see if those investments pay off. And in the meantime, the top economic priority for many Americans remains the high cost of living. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Craig Lamolt. A former state representative and former chair of the state Republican Party is suing the state legislature over its limitations on state auditor Diana DeZoglio's ability to audit the legislature. Jim Lyons filed a lawsuit last week in Suffolk Superior Court accusing House lawmakers of amending the voter-passed initiative by adopting a rule that he asserts would limit DeZoglio's access through use of an independent auditor for House financial accounts.
What the legislature did was put in place a rule that said, no, we know better than the people of Massachusetts. We're going to control exactly what happens.
Lyons wants the new House rule invalidated. He expects he'll get a court date in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and he wants other organizations and people to join him. Boston's soon-to-start National Women's Soccer League club, Boss Nation FC, is introducing its first general manager. Dominic Guasque spoke to local media for the first time today. Guasque comes to Boston by way of FC Barcelona, where he was an executive for that club's women's soccer team. He says it's an honor to lead Boss Nation.
I am very excited for this opportunity to start a team that starts from scratch and do it from the ground up, and very eager to create a legacy in this city that our fans can celebrate for many years to come.
Boss Nation FC is scheduled to begin play in 2026. Cloudy today, some drizzling rain, a high near 40, some rain over tonight, and then it looks like it's going to warm up significantly, a high tomorrow around 60, and windy with some thunderstorms possible in the afternoon. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher is committed to helping clients stay on track to reach their financial goals and enjoy a comfortable retirement. FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
I'm Andrea Cabral, in for Marjorie. King,
Other
Chief
contributors
National
include
So welcome back to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm Boston Globe columnist Shirley Leung, and I also have a podcast as well called Say More. Find it wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm also here with former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral. We're in for Jim and Marjorie today. Jim and Marjorie will be back here tomorrow for December's Ask the Mayor with Mayor Michelle Wu. Hello again, Andrea.
Hello again, Shirley. Here's a reminder about our text prompt of the day. It's when you call or text us at 877-301-8970. This is our holiday cookie edition. Are you a gingerbread fan, a pecan praline traditionalist, a frosted sugar cookie person? Or are you frantically searching for new recipes to try, exploring the latest matcha sesame recipe that will dazzle your guests? Text us your favorite recipes, types of holiday cookies at 877-301-8970. We'll read them a little bit before 1 o'clock. We are now joined at the desk by someone the Boston Globe called a local woman.
In a headline.
Chased by a coyote, right?
Yeah.
We prefer the title Media Maven. Of course, it's Sue O'Connell. She's the co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News and political commentator for NBC 10 Boston. How are you, Sue? I haven't seen you in a while.
I know. Are you being Jim or are you being Marjorie?
I'm supposedly Jim.
Okay.
But grudgingly.
Grudgingly.
Yeah.
So I'm a sour cream cookie.
What is that?
My mother,
what is sour
the one
cream
thing
cookie?
that she was good at, she used to call them, we grew up on Shirley Ave in Revere, which was mostly Jewish in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And she would call them Jewish sour cream cookies because they were served for Hanukkah. But they are sour cream with flour and lots of sugar and vanilla. And when she passed away, she left me the recipe, but it was not correct. And to torture me a little bit. It's only taken me 30 years to get the recipe correct.
So what is the sour cream cookie? What does it look like? Is it a drop cookie?
It's not pretty.
Is it a
it's
drop
not pretty,
cookie?
and it's really, the dough is really difficult to work with because there's a lot of flour, and you have to refrigerate it for 2 hours. And it's
the best
really,
cookies are refrigerated.
Yeah,
you know
a lot
that,
of work, a lot of work. But it's not a pretty cookie. It's just a little drop cookie. You put some sugar on top of it, and it is, if you get the texture of it right, a cakey texture, it's delightful.
Well, doesn't arugula have sour cream?
Yeah, sour cream, and also sour cream can be a replacement in a number of recipes.
So I can't tell. Do you actually like these cookies?
I love these cookies.
Or you just do it?
No. I love these cookies, and my brother and I would ask for them throughout the year because they were so good, and she would only make them during December because they were so hard to make. And then when I started making them, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why they are really hard.
I want the recipe. I want the recipe
we'll
afterwards.
See how you do today. If you do okay, you'll get the recipe.
So Sue, we started the show talking about Luigi Mangione.
Yeah.
And we started the hour with listeners kind of weighing in on why we're obsessed with Luigi and other true crime stories. So why do you think we want to know everything about Luigi, and what does it say about us?
Yeah, well, I always start this because, I've been covering the Karen Reed trial quite a bit, and people are always surprised. Remember in the caves, early humans, there was a picture of the drawing of an elephant and someone with a spear. I always say that wasn't really a hunting picture, that was a true crime picture. And so, because we don't know what happened. We don't know who was attacking who for what reason. So I think the desire to see these crimes and be involved in them are something that's compelling. And I also, listening to you guys earlier, and I'm saying this understanding the implications of racism and economy and social status. When someone who is unlikely to be involved in a crime, either from a perception, it may be right or wrong, either as a victim or perpetrator, I think it tends to make you think, oh my gosh, that could happen to me, because I can relate to these people who don't seem to be involved in something that from a racism or economic standpoint I view as this could likely happen to you. And plus he's handsome. I mean, it's, this idea of this stylish assassin is something that would be out of the ordinary. Had he been looked like some of the other shooters that we have unfortunately become accustomed to over the years, it's not the same sort of chase. And like talking about too how long it takes. I'm using finger quotes, how long it takes to actually catch someone. It didn't take long, I think. I think you would agree.
No, it actually didn't compared to years gone by,
right.
Especially.
And then to be found at a McDonald's eating a hash brown.
Right.
And that he took his mask down. The one big mistake he made from our point of view right now is he took his mask down to flirt with somebody.
Right.
That sort of adds to it. And then this exotic background that he has now, that he's wealthy, from a wealthy family at least. He lived in Hawaii in one of those tech bro communes, so it's fascinating in that it doesn't fit a profile you would think of someone who would commit a murder like this, knowing full well that domestic violence happens everywhere. We don't give that the same kind of attention. So I just want to be clear, I'm discussing this from the public perspective, not from what really happens in real life.
No, I mean, I think it's true that certainly as we learn more about his background and people see that he, went to private schools and he comes from a wealthy background. I think his parents have a successful business. People think, well, you have money, what are you complaining about? Right. The bottom line is that at this point, we don't actually know what it is that he's complaining about or whether or not United Healthcare had anything to do with his grievance, which it does appear he had some grievance against the healthcare industry, even at this early stage. But the part of this that I always worry about is whether or not this is really the tail wagging the dog. Is this a situation where we come by our, like to your point about the cave painting, we come by our desire to know who, what, where, and when of the crime, and whether or not it was resolved. We come by that as part of our nature, or are we driven to it by the fact that it generates revenue and that people will talk about it and it generates media, it generates ad revenue, and that the fact that anybody being victimized on any level, that's bound to get attention. But we're fed this.
I agree, but it's also always historically been true regardless of what the media is. So I don't think you can separate those two things. I think that, my mother always had these true crime paperbacks, right? And they were based on true stories, and they had these very salacious covers to them, and I remember reading them when I wasn't supposed to. She didn't have X. She didn't have 24-hour news, but the media of the time still did that. Yes, it makes money, but it also is what people want to watch. I mean, we talk about this all the time in broadcast news. Why are we always showing car crashes? Why are we always showing fires, especially when it isn't it's obviously these are horrendous things that happen to individual people. We do it because people watch it. to your point, are we doing it because they watch it because we've conditioned them to watch it? I think they're completely connected and they can't be teased apart.
I'm sure that people poured over the newspaper after Lincoln was shot at Our American Cousin. And in fact, the play did box office boffo business.
Right
People
after.
wanted to be in the theater where he was shot.
Right.
They didn't care about the play because the play wasn't actually that great. But I get that there's a historical part of this that people really, really, really want to know. Maybe my question is more about whether or not, in sensing that this is something people we really want to know, we are absolutely willing to feed their endless appetite to our own detriment for it. That's what I'm talking about.
Sue, we wanted to talk to you about as Trump's inauguration nears and how some people in the LGBTQ plus community are anxiously preparing a rollback of their rights. They're stockpiling medications. They're trying to adopt, kids as soon as they can because they're afraid. So can you talk about what's happening in this community and what is going on?
Sure. We talked about this a little bit last week, and my motto has been plan, don't panic. Planning is never a bad thing. Panicking usually makes whatever you're trying to plan for worse.
It's hard not to, though.
It is hard not to, but it also, to your point also earlier, Andrea, do you want to scare people into thinking you really need to take action? Where people will say, well, a lot of these things won't happen, or do you want to try and convince people that, hey, it's a good idea for all of us to have a will. It's a good idea for all of us to have a living will and somebody who will take over our businesses and our personal finances in case we are incapacitated. And for LGBTQ couples at this point, I have colleagues who are planning to get married in June, came to me and said, should we elope? Should we get married now, right? I'm not a lawyer. I told them to talk to a lawyer. But I said, if you're concerned about things, well, draw up paperwork now. There's contracts that you can draw up to protect yourself now so that if you're afraid you won't have the access to marriage in June, which you probably will have access to marriage in June, but you'll be protected. Adopting kids, it's the same route. Where are there things that you can do now to protect yourself and your legal rights that you anticipate getting just by nature of getting married or by adopting a child. So people are taking those actions right now. As to the medications, it's not just the LGBTQ community that I'm hearing about stockpiling medications, not just reproductive care and abortion care. Almost every provider, my daughter has a bunch of chronic illnesses and at least 20 medications that she's on, and every single provider has said, here's an extra script, go ahead and fill it so that you'll have it on hand. I don't know what that means. I don't know if they're concerned that there's going to be shortages, but there is a feeling of preparation and protecting your legal rights in case the worst thing happens after January 20th.
I was telling Andrea earlier that I have a friend who's, friend of a friend. They live in Canada, but their kids were born, are American citizens, and they moved up there, and they have a transgender daughter, and they have to renew the passport soon, and they're like, do we? Does she remain a son, or do we go with the daughter?
Right.
And they decided, we don't know what's happening in the U.S. We're going to keep the passport the same gender, because we don't want the attention. Attention. We don't want Trump's America know that we've got a transgender daughter.
Yeah, it's one of those moments in time where it's important to be informed and to make decisions about what the ramifications of what your decision can be. The other issue is just for all of us. If we don't know what the Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy ramifications are going to be. So if they're going to cut half of the folks that process your passports, might be a good idea to get your passport now, right?
The part of this that I want to talk about, because I was so struck by the fact that when the SCOTUS was discussing the transgender rights case, how completely disconnected they were from trans people as people. So what I want to talk about with you is how this feels in 2024 America for there to be any group of people thinking to themselves, I may have to leave my country because an incoming president and his administration don't believe that in America there is a place for me or that I should have any rights. What is that when you talk to folks out in the community, because you're very community-minded, and between Bay Windows and the South End News, you must hear it. What does it feel like for those people?
Well, it's an exhaustion and a disappointment in our country. I mean, I will say my own bias, which I don't think I was disabused of until about 2005, was I used to say on this show with Jim and Marjorie, listen, if you just let us get married, we'll go to the suburbs and you'll never hear from us again. And that's the same argument you hear when it's like any equality finally gets granted to a group that should be. You have this feeling like, oh, good, we got the right to vote. We're just going to go vote now and you won't have to hear from us again. And the reality is that it is an ongoing battle that we have to fight, each of us individually and with our constituencies, fight for our rights on a regular basis. When during the early 1990s, when there was a movement to lift the ban on gays in the military, lift the ban, my job at that time was to host a brunch, just so you know how my political activism evolved. And we were handing stuff out at Faneuil Marketplace, and this woman who's probably in her 80s, I said, hey, will you sign this petition to lift the ban? And she took it, she signed it, and she said, just so you know, I'm signing this to let you out of military service, and when you come back to me, I will sign it to get you into military service, and if you come to me again, I'll sign it to get you out of military service, and then I'll sign it again if you want to get back in. So the evolution of the disappointment of, one step forward, 2 steps back,
Right.
3 steps forward, this is it, right? This is how it's going to be. There's not going to be a we're done. And I think that when folks are, especially younger people, are expressing the deep disappointment that we have had in this election nationally, except for president, enormous strides for LGBTQ candidates, enormous success in LGBTQ issues. But at the same time, you have to work to protect your rights, to make sure that you get the health care that you want, your families are protected, and you can't count on the government in this way, in the way that you might have been able to right now until January 20th.
It's a very good lesson to learn. Speaking of which, and someone who I don't know that has learned a lot over the years. I don't know if did you used to watch The Real World?
Of course.
How many seasons did you watch?
I watched the Boston. I don't remember watching the Boston season, but I know I watched the Boston season.
The one in the firehouse.
The
okay.
firehouse up, and I also had a number of them on when I hosted 1 in 10 on FNX. A couple of them I had on, and I remember how enormously annoyed we all were with all of the cast members of The Real World in our restaurants, in our bars, hanging out at our spots, that it was, you love watching it when they're in another city, but when they're here, not so much.
I didn't watch it at all, but you guys, Andrea watched, was obsessed.
Not every
Did you
one.
watch
I
this
watched
one?
the first one, the second one. I definitely watched the Boston one because it was in Boston, and I actually do remember Sean Duffy. So tell people a little bit about Sean Duffy. He is sort of the latest, along with the Pete Hegseths of the world, latest sort of TV personality, reality show star, to find his way into being a nominee into the Trump cabinet. It's astonishing.
Yes, he's going to be Secretary of Transportation?
Yeah,
right?
after somebody the
Pete
quality of Pete Buttigieg, there comes Sean Duffy.
Right, so Sean was on Real World Boston in the early 1990s when they stayed at the firehouse. And Sean was the famous... one thing we've learned after all these years of reality TV casting is that they tend to find archetypes that they want to put into the spot and have these roles. And he was the white bro, semi-racist, controversial... Semi. He would say controversial things that weren't really racist, but were leaning into some racism, like, gee, I'm sorry that my grandfather owned your grandfather, but why do I have to be, upset about it?
That's
that
less
kind
of a lean and more of a let's have a seat.
Well, it was the 90s.
Yeah.
So he fit that role, and he was not liked by his fellow castmates, and also, kind of parlayed this into what was he on? Real?
He was on the Real.
No, but then he was on the
Road Rules.
Road Rules, where he continued that person.
Where he met his wife, who was also a Road Rules contestant.
Right, and then he went on to be Attorney General or district
attorney.
Attorney.
He was appointed and was there for 8 years.
So he has a classic, I would say, a classic Trump background in that he was popular, he was on television, he's good looking.
And he says the same things as an adult that he said on The Real World. That's how you know he wasn't a casual, he wasn't racist adjacent.
He was cast as this.
So the cast member he spotted with the most was a black female cast member named Genesis. Was it Genesis?
I think it was, or what was her name? Alphonse. Genesis, I think, was
a different one.
We'll see.
Well, here's some sound of him. He fought with everybody, so it's really difficult to distinguish.
Andrew and I are just going to go down the memory hole of The Real World.
Here's the spat that he has with Genesis, and this was about cleaning the house.
Yes.
I don't see you trying to keep the house clean, though, Jen. Why are you saying right now? Why don't you say, hey, let's keep
Because you clean the house once, and you think you're
you want to keep it clean. You want to keep it clean, right?
So now you think because you cleaned that everybody should keep it clean. Oh, Sean cleaned.
No,
oh my
I'm
God.
not saying I want to clean it.
Manila cleans all the time, and you trash it right after.
I don't cook in the kitchen yet. Before. If you felt that way, why didn't you say it? Use your mole. You have a mole. Use it.
You're so blind. It's not even funny.
You are, Genesis.
No, you are.
That's going to be a great Secretary of Transportation.
Yeah, we probably should have done. Yeah, there's a different clip where he talks to Cyrus, who's one of the two black cast members. Yeah, who's he talks. They supposedly became friends. But what struck me about this is how unchanged he is, sort of the evolution of Sean Duffy, and now he's in a position of enormous power. He's not just fighting with, fellow college-age kids.
And I would also point out that the number of nominees who are black that Donald Trump has put forward is 0.
Well, that's not a surprise at all.
It's a surprise to some black Republicans who were supporting him and who were out there talking.
And they're idiots for being surprised. If people tell you who they are, why don't you listen?
No, I don't know much about, other than...
You want to talk about The Real World commercial?
Well, no, I don't. No, but I was going to say, is he qualified to be Transportation Secretary?
He wasn't qualified to be on The Real World. And all he had to be for that was a college student.
Yeah, I mean, I again,
he's a congressman.
I get a lot of grief for this on the X when I say this, but there are a number of people that Donald Trump could be picking who I disagree with 100%, but who are qualified to be in the positions they're on, like Ron DeSantis, who I couldn't disagree with more on a number of issues, but I would agree he is qualified to be the defense secretary if they actually went ahead and chose him. And for some reason, Donald Trump is picking these people who are not qualified for the positions that they are being
a lot of them have
nominated
TV
for.
background. Pete Hegseth for defense secretary. Duffy was on Fox. Dr. Oz, also a TV star. So do we have time for one more thing?
Yeah.
You want to talk about TikTok video? Let's talk about the TikTok video.
Very briefly.
Of Zendaya caught on WZVB Channel 5. You want to set it up? It went viral.
So it was 2 weekends ago. Newbury Street shut down for Sundays, and Zendaya, who was here shooting a movie, and she was walking down closed Newbury Street with her mom, and my colleagues over at Channel 5 got the clip, and they put it up and didn't realize it was Zendaya. And I'm not going to criticize them, but I can tell you that we once saw Jennifer Lawrence after Joe Biden was elected come running out of the Back Bay, and everyone in my office who's under 25 was like, oh my God, it's Jennifer Lawrence. So Zendaya was highly recognizable, especially since people were looking and pointing at her. And then TikTok, of course, had the fine young folks of TikTok had a lot of fun at my friends at Channel 5's expense a little bit.
And did you recognize? I don't know. I can barely pronounce her name, so I'm so out of it.
I recognized her when I saw her, but in Channel 5's defense, it's B-roll. So B-roll is just like, let me just kind of cover the waterfront.
You actually have to look a lot at B-roll before you put it on, because you have to make sure you're not putting some things on, like signs that have swears in them. I mean, B-roll actually takes a little bit more scrutiny.
Interesting. So it really was they didn't recognize it.
They need a young producer.
You had to know that Zendaya was here, which I do. You had to know that Zendaya is often on Newbury Street, which she is. And you had to know that, Zendaya is tall and beautiful, and that was her mother, which I did. So therefore, it's, you had to know these things.
So this is really more about your crush on Zendaya.
I've actually got looking for Zendaya on Newbury Street for an assignment.
See?
Oh, wow.
So it's all right. But it's okay, Channel 5.
Okay, we've been speaking with local woman
Thank you, Sue.
Sue
Thank you.
O'Connell.
Good to see you.
Also, Zendaya stalker.
I'm not a Zendaya stalker. Who am I stalking?
She's co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News and political commentator for NBC 10 Boston. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Sue.
And coming up, the Seaport is now Snowport. Dressed in its winter best for the season, we'll talk with two vendors, Nadia Spellman, founder of Dumpling Daughter, and Karen Clarke, founder of Clarke's Cakes and Cookies. We're going to be eating dumplings and cookies. This is like the perfect day.
This is wonderful.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the BPL.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, they might be giants. They're definitely giants in the world of alternative rock. Now they're bringing their big tour to Boston with a pair of shows at the Orpheum. We talked to one half of the famed duo, John Flansburgh, about keeping the mighty, prolific, and unique band a fan favorite 40 years on. That and more today at 2 on The Culture Show on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Safety Insurance, offering auto insurance policies designed to help for when the worst happens. You can ask an independent agent about safety insurance. Safety Insurance. We'll help you manage life's storms. And Rogers Fish Company, founded by Roger Berkowitz. You can give the gift of New England seafood dishes, including double clam chowder, crab cakes, lobster, and fish delivered to your doorstep. Online ordering at rogersfishco.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm Andrea Cabral, and Shirley Leung is here with me. We're both in for Jim and Marjorie. They'll be back live at the BPL tomorrow with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu for another segment of Ask the Mayor. Our last reminder about our text prompt of the day is coming at you right now. Call or text us 877-301-8970. It's holiday cookie time. We want to know if you're a traditionalist or are you incredibly creative, making cookies out of things nobody would ever think cookies should be made out of. Do you have some time-honored family recipes that you always make sure get taken care of during the holidays? New York Times cooking section, are you perusing it as we speak to try to find the latest trend, hoping to dazzle your guests? Who or what are your go-to cookies and your avant-garde experiments? You have to text us your thoughts and your desires around these cookies. Who do you want to make these cookies for you if you don't want to make them yourself? At 877-301-8970, we're going to read them just before the 1 o'clock newscast. From now until December 29th, the Seaport is dressed in its winter best for the season. It's billing itself as Boston's premier Christmas destination with markets and activities like snowless curling, which I'm still not exactly sure what that is. More info can be found at bostonseaport.xyz/snowport. We're joined now by two vendors from the Snowport, Nadia Spellman, founder of Dumpling Daughter, and Karen Clarke, founder of Clarke's Cakes and Cookies, and they brought us some samples, so we are absolutely in heaven. Nadia and Karen, thanks so much for being here, and thank you for the food.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to share.
So I'm going to start first with you, Karen. Tell us, how long have you been a vendor at the Snowport?
We started in 2021.
2021. So you know a little bit about the way it's sort of organized,
yes,
and how the vendors get there. So tell us a little bit about, it's got something like 120 vendors, and then all kinds of activities, dining experiences. Tell us a little bit about the Snowport.
Well, 120 plus, maybe an extra two vendors, from artisanal, lines of clothing. There's toys for children, beautiful jewelry that you won't find anywhere else. That's handmade, handcrafted. There's so many different types for me to just say, oh yes, this. I would leave out so many other people. Like there was you didn't mention me. I'm sorry. It's just there's so many other different types, that unique, boutique, curated gifts that you can buy from them, and then walk the streets because it is in a lot, but they dress it up to make it look like it's a winter wonderland out of a Hallmark card.
Oh, wow.
It's truly beautiful.
I have not been there. I've been to the Seaport many times, but not the Snowport. And so, Nadia, how can anyone just show up? Do you have to get tickets? How does it work?
Yes, the weekend lines are quite long. I think it's the biggest attraction in Boston for the holidays, and that's why it's so flattering to be included. And the weekdays are slower, and when the weather is good, obviously everyone comes out. And so I would say, if you want a really full experience, go when it's not the best day of the week. Obviously, it's going to be closed tomorrow because of the winds, but watch the weather. When it's not the best day, get out there and support local.
So, okay, I want to dig into some of the food you guys have brought.
I thought you would.
So let's start with, before we get to cooks and cake and everything sweet, maybe we should have a little lunch first.
Sure.
So let's start with the dumplings. So Nadia, tell us a little bit about Dumpling Daughter. I mean, you've written a cookbook. You guys have storefronts. And tell us a little bit, and then maybe tell us a little bit about what you brought.
Yes, the story behind Dumpling Daughter started when I was born. Because I was born into a restaurant family. And so Dumpling Daughter is really a celebration of the legacy that my parents paved. And that's why it's called Dumpling Daughter, because I'm Sally Leung's daughter, and she's a legend in Boston. We started our restaurants 10 years ago. We now have 3 restaurants in Brookline, South Boston, and Weston. And we started our consumer products line 3 years ago. So we have frozen dumplings, buns, and sauces. And I'm taking the opportunity today to actually talk to you about our newest innovation. You guys are the first to have the sesame Szechuan sauce.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because right now...
Is that what we're tasting here?
I want you to take it home, but you can, of course, try it here.
I'm going to try it here.
We're the #1 soy sauce on Amazon.
Wow.
And we have ginger soy and spicy sweet soy.
Wow.
And this is our 3rd baby. So I'm very excited to have you all try it because it really rounds out the group of sauces that we currently offer in supermarkets and on Amazon.
So what you brought us today, what is this called?
That you're having a chicken Taiwanese bun. It is a chicken
fabulous
sandwich, but Taiwanese street style.
It is absolutely delicious. I just want to say to people, this is amazing.
So these dumplings, what flavor is this?
I brought you our restaurant special, pan-seared pork and cabbage. That's our #1 selling restaurant item.
I like the skins. So I grew up. I grew up at a time when there were no frozen dumplings in the grocery stores. So my mom had to make them by hand, and so I love that the skins are a little bit thicker. I was explaining to Andrea, there's the thin dumpling skins and there are thicker dumpling skins, and they taste a little. You can tell. You can usually tell when they're a little more homemade.
Yeah, you get it because you grew up with that. And I would say the reason why I started Dumpling Daughter is because I grew up with grandma's dumplings in the freezer, and I wanted to make it accessible to everyone. Everyone deserves frozen dumplings in the freezer.
That's right.
Because it's an easy, quick boil. It's a beautiful meal, and it's so convenient. And so that's why I started the company, because everyone should have access to dumplings and the convenience of them.
Now, Karen, I have had your unbelievable treats because they're sold at the Newsfeed Cafe. So I have become this huge fan of the vegan chocolate cake, which is incredibly moist, unbelievably flavorful. I know I sound like I'm on Great British Baking Show, but it really is absolutely delicious. Tell us what you brought us today, and tell us a little bit about how you got your company started.
Sure. Let me tell you about the company, how it got started. I started my company back in 2019, but I've been doing this type of baking, this specialty baking, which that's been over 26 years now. The specialty baking, for those of you who are not familiar with, what we do is that we bake everything that you've come to know and love, but without sacrificing the taste or the texture. Why? Because it's vegan.
Right.
And so we want to bring back that line of nostalgia whenever, not only just in flavor, but also texture. Because we understand that there is this concept of vegan, it's kind of weird, but we want to bring it to that level that you remembered growing up as a child. And just like Nadia was mentioning, that her family is from the line of restaurants, food business. Same thing with me. My family is not so much in the restaurant, but bakers. So when I baked, I had to go up against the
Oh,
bakers.
yeah. Yeah. And those are the people that will tell you when your baking is not up to snuff.
That's right.
So these recipes that you've curated yourself, are they recipes from your mom, your grandmother, that you have sort of put a twist on in order to make them vegan, so it's sort of the best of both worlds? How did you come to get your catalog?
Well, I went. My mother always used to make the banana bread for me growing up as a kid, and that was my comfort. And when I became a mom and I had children, I wanted to also, give them that as well. But now switching over to making it vegan was a lot more challenging. A lot of mistakes. A lot of things just did not. It went somewhere else called the trash. And but
that's what it is. It's trial and error and figuring it out.
It really was. And I finally figured it out. Especially with the banana bread, I finally figured out the medium and the technique that I needed in order to bring that rise, so that when you do have that in your mouth, it has that texture that you always remembered, that I always remembered when my mom used to make it for me. And so that's
fabulous.
Now you have in your box, as you can see, the very first one. We're going to leave that little man for last.
That's adorable.
That's our gingerbread man. But you have our trio here again. But the difference between, I remember, Andrea, you had the blueberry lemon tea cake, you had the carrot cake, and the banana bread, I think, last time. This time you have, the carrot cake, you have banana bread, but you now have our very special and first to hit the fall season, our pumpkin spice.
Crumb cake. This is lovely. I cannot
This is
wait.
great. I've already broken into it.
Yeah.
I love the carrot cake. What is this? Is this the crumb cake? The crumb cake is delicious.
The crumb cake.
And I had the lemon for breakfast. I had the lemon, the blueberry lemon. That was delicious. Yes. And that's the pumpkin.
Yes,
this is great.
That's the banana bread.
Banana bread.
That's the banana bread.
Oh, so this is the pumpkin is out of this world. That's out of this world.
That's cinnamon, nutmeg, vanilla, molasses,
that's out of this world.
Ginger. Yes.
And so what makes it, maybe you guys, I'm sorry, I was too busy eating, so you probably have already asked this question, but what makes this vegan? Like, what makes it, the carrot cake and the crumb cake vegan?
What makes it vegan is that there are no animal products whatsoever involved. That means the milk or any byproducts like
what about eggs?
No eggs.
Really?
No dairy.
This is really impressive. So what makes it rise? What gives it lightness?
We say a lot of love.
This is great. So Andrea and we love watching British, I like to watch the baking shows in particular, not so much the cooking shows. But do you end up watching baking shows too?
I have yet to watch the British one that everyone keeps telling me about.
Great British baking show. You need to watch it. It's great. And I started watching the Blue Ribbon baking show. So also Karen has little cakes, right? You brought little cakes for the audience, right?
I
Samples.
did. I brought out samples. I would like everyone to try. Also, I got some.
That is fabulous.
Which sample? All of them?
Okay, so
and you're at the Newsfeed Cafe.
And we at the Newsfeed Cafe. We have our blueberry lemon tea cake over there, our crumb cake, and we also have our chocolate chip cookies. Now we're going to sample out our chocolate chip cookies, our banana bread, our carrot cake, frosted carrot cake, and the pumpkin spice.
That's excellent. Nadia, let me ask you, when I was reading the story about Dumpling Daughter, and I just saw it must have been a potential DoorDash delivery. Dumpling Daughter is carried somewhere and I thought, I know I should really, really try these because I haven't eaten a lot of them. And as I read the backstory, and I thought of your grandmother making these and your mother making these, when you started your business, what was the feeling that you had? Because Sally Ling's was very well known. You said that, in case people don't know, it was Sally Ling's Chinese restaurant, which was amazingly popular in Massachusetts. But when you struck out on your own, especially striking out on your own as a woman, what was the feeling that you had that you could be successful? What made you know that you could be successful if you did this?
I think that the most incredible part about starting a business is getting the support from the family, right? the lessons that my late father had taught me about being a self-sufficient woman, doing what you're passionate about. And I knew that taking that step forward was my only destiny and what I was sent
You were that
to do.
sure?
Yes, absolutely. And I said, if it doesn't work, that's fine. At least I tried. But my mother was by my side, my family, and everyone just was there supporting me, my great friends. And now I have an incredible staff. I think it's the people that you surround yourself with that give you that drive, that hope. And to grow a team, to grow employees, to grow myself, it's all so rewarding. And I think that's the name of the game, is the journey. It's not the destination, it's the journey. And it's been an incredibly difficult but also rewarding one. It brings me literally, I don't think I could do anything else. It brings me so much joy when I hear people say that they are able to get Chinese comfort food, that they're able to use our sauces at home, that they're able to follow my mom's recipes, my grandmother's recipes, these generational, time-tested flavors in their own home. It makes me emotional because that's the love that I had growing up, is around food. And I'm sure that you can relate, is just the feeling you get when you have this food, when you bring people together through it, and you're able to share your family recipes. It's an incredible feeling, and it's about that journey, and I'm so glad I did it, because I don't think I could really do anything else.
But Nadia, usually if your parents ran Chinese restaurants, they don't want their kids to grow up to run Chinese restaurants. So what was the difference? And I don't think you started out, I mean, you were in investment banking, you were in some other career path before, right?
Yes.
So how come you made that switch, and how come your parents supported you? Usually Chinese restaurant owners don't want they want their kids far away from their kitchen.
You're absolutely right. They said, don't work as hard as us. We did this because we love it, because we're passionate about fine dining. I mean, my mom cooked with Julia Child, and Julia Child was a customer. That was their passion. But if I follow their lead, I'm following the lead of do what you're passionate about. And when I told my mom that, she said, well, if that's what you are passionate about, I must support you as your mother. And I know that when my father was alive, he said that if it's your passion and coming from within, then it's not going to be that hard for you. Just let your intuition speak and let it lead you, and take the lessons along the way. And so, yes, my parents encouraged me to follow my passion. They led by example. And here I am celebrating what they did, and also carrying it forward to my kids is really meaningful. Knowing that my kids can follow the cookbook and can watch YouTube and look at the videos and the content I've made around these family traditions is really meaningful to me. And so, yes, I did go against their word by opening a restaurant, but I did also embrace their best advice.
So, Karen, for you, sort of give us an idea of, you've mentioned generationally where the recipes have come from. Are you, is this common in your family to sort of take it to the business level? And do you have family members that work with you?
I do have family members that work with me. It's my husband and my sons.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, my 3 sons. To take that recipe and put it to a business model, that's not what our family did with their recipes. It was more passed down to do for our family functions and parties.
Yes, we bake for each other. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me to come and do something, first of all, I didn't even think that it would get to this level that I'm at. I had a product that I was looking for when I decided to become vegan. And I said, you know what? This is really good. It can be done. And everyone, was very shy. They looked at it suspect. But when they would taste it, they would go, oh, this is pretty good. And I would tell them, yeah, it's vegan. They would go,
It is hard to
vegan?
believe. It is hard to believe that it's vegan. It really is.
Yeah. Why did you want to make it? Maybe you guys already talked. Sorry, I have discovered I cannot eat and be I can't eat and listen at the same time because I'm so focused on the food. It's so delicious. But Karen, why vegan? I mean, did you have an allergy, or what made you decide I'm going to make a whole vegan line?
What actually, the impetus to all of it was that I had 2 sons at the time, and I didn't want them to have high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
We're talking about something over 25 years ago, where you now see on labels, no fructose corn syrup, no high fructose corn syrup. Well, that's what I was doing back then. And I said, you know what, there's got to be some other type of sweeteners that are in these products other than this. It was very hard to find. So I said, I'll just bake it. And then someone came along and said, have you heard of vegan? And I said, no, I don't understand. No, what is that? So they gave me the insight. I understood. I liked the precepts. The precepts were simple, nothing, just talking, just food-wise. And at that point, I said, you know what? I'm going to try to do this. The part that became difficult was, I want my waffles in the morning. How do I do that now? Because that's eggs, that's butter, okay? And that's where this now started blossoming out into, okay, now how do I make my brownies? Because there's a lot of eggs in there, there's a lot of butter in there.
Yeah.
So that now, you said finding the recipes, I had to now go and search, I mean literally, go to the library, open up the books, even call in books from the library and say, okay, I need to find, is anybody writing or is there a recipe that's vegan? And you had some, but they were not to what I remember growing up,
Right.
brownie would taste like when you made it. And I said, okay, I'm going to try this a different way. And that's where you basically turn your kitchen into a test kitchen.
So how big are you both? We've only got about a minute and a half left here. Where can we find your products? How big an operation do you have here? And then Nadia, you tell us where we can find Dumpling Daughter.
Okay, right now we're at the Snowport at Seaport from now until the 29th. And you can also find our products online at clarkscakesandcookies.com. From after Snowport, in the month of January, we'll be at the Wayland Farmers Market as well. Just to let you know, we have found a way to make vegan hot cocoa.
Wow.
And it is our best seller. We have literally lines at our booth, and I call it slinging hot cocoa because we're just...
And you're here at the Newsfeed Cafe. Folks can come down to the BPL and they can buy
true. Yes.
Clarke's Cakes and Cookies at the Newsfeed Cafe. Nadia, where can we find Dumpling Daughter?
Yeah, wow, let's go. Market Basket. We're going to have some new SKUs hitting Market Basket in January. It's the first and only place you can get our new Szechuan sesame sauce and our new SKUs of frozen scallion pancakes and crab rangoons.
Oh, that's fabulous.
They're at the Fruit Center. They're at Fruit Center in Milton because we both live in Milton. I just saw Dumpling Daughter frozen in the Fruit Center right now.
Yeah, we're in a lot of beautiful gourmet markets in the New England area. We also have our restaurants where people will cook the dumplings for you, South Boston, Weston, and Brookline. We also have Amazon, which I mentioned we're the #1 sauce.
That's where I saw it.
So
that's where I saw it.
And then the cookbook is a great gift for any mom, any daughter, any child, I think is a great gift. And that's everything.
That's
but,
a lot of
BJ's
places.
as well.
Oh,
BJ's
that's great.
Wholesale.
That's great.
So
That's
has our
great.
pork and chive. But, support local. Market Basket's local.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our restaurants. So we're really, really honored.
All right, so before we let you go, our next segment is about texting. We're going to have people text their holiday cookies. So do you have a go-to holiday cookie recipe? Karen, what's yours?
A go-to holiday recipe? Is it have to be cookie?
Yeah, because we're going to ask our texters about their favorite holiday cookie.
My favorite holiday cookie. Oh, it's the spritz.
Spritz. Oh, you use a little machine and spritz them out, right?
Well, we use a piping bag.
Piping bag, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, spritz. I like
We
the
have to
spritz.
get so elaborate.
Oh, spritz. That's old school. I like it. What about you, Nadia?
Well, late night I enjoy boiling my pork and chive dumplings, but if I have to eat cookies, I like molasses.
Molasses
So do I.
cookies.
I'm
Oh,
with
that's
you.
good.
And that's a childhood thing, too. I absolutely love it
With the
molasses
big
cookies.
crunchy sugar on
Oh,
top.
I
Yes,
love that.
big You're absolutely right.
So we've been speaking with Karen Clarke, founder of
Thank you
Clarke's
both.
Cakes and Cookies,
Thank
and
you.
Nadia Lou Spellman, founder of Dumpling Daughter. They're both vendors of this year's Snowport Winter Market. For more information, go to bostonseaport.xyz/Snowport. It's great. Thank thank you for feeding us lunch too. Otherwise,
and feeding our audience.
Yeah,
thank you so
we
much.
Wouldn't eat. So they never let us eat during this show. So they never let us give us lunch breaks. Nothing. Anyways, coming back after you guys get a quick break, but not us. But our text segment of the day is the holiday cookie and you. Are you a traditionalist? A little more haute couture with your dessert offerings this time of year? We'll read your best text. You're listening to Boston Public Radio at 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
This week, we're bringing you stories of people staying active as they age. We visit a gym where older athletes say that strength training improves their quality of life.
Now I carried 4 quarts of milk. That is miraculous. What it was to me.
I'm Juana Summers, active aging, on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations. And Commonwealth Shakespeare Company, presenting Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol, Boston's new holiday tradition, December 8th through the 22nd at the Emerson Cutler Majestic Theater. More at comshakes.org/carol.
We're back.
Are we back?
We are definitely back. All right. We were so busy eating and talking to the folks in the last segment that we completely forgot to look at the clock. But welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're glad you stayed with us despite our greed. We're live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm Andrea Cabral. I'm here with Shirley Leung. We're in for Jim and Marjorie today. They are both back tomorrow with Mayor Wu. So it's time for our text segment of the day, all about holiday cookies. Are you a gingerbread, pecan, praline traditionalist, or are you delving into the creative annals of the New York Times cooking section to find the latest matcha sesame recipe that will dazzle your guests? Shirley, what are the cookie-loving people saying?
Well, people love pizzelles. That's my favorite too. So Pam in Maine, old pizzelli recipes from my mother. That's the Italian waffle cookies.
Yeah.
You got to bring out a machine and you got to do the dough just right. She still uses her mom's appliance. We have Anonymous, another pizzelles, and Nutella cookies are my family's favorite. Apparently pizzelle is, I think it's a lot of butter, but I think you need to anise oil that you can only probably buy in the North End. That's the secret, I think, to a good pizzelle. I always do that. That's my go-to holiday cookie as well.
So one of our anonymous texters says that her favorite holiday Christmas cookie that her mom got from a magazine in the 1950s is a lemon shortbread made with a hard-boiled egg yolk in the dough. It's rolled, cut into star shapes, baked, then frosted with lemon icing and dusted with colorful mini nonpareils. Gorgeous soft texture with a little crunch from the decoration, a sublime flavor. Carol from Ipswich says her favorite kinds of Christmas cookies are sugar-frosted cookies, wintergreen chocolate cookies, black and white cookies. Carol really, really likes cookies. Half wintergreen, pink, half chocolate, soft cookie. She cuts them out. She makes lots of frosted sugar cookies. She has collected over 3,000 cookie cutters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I guess she apparently just puts them all to use. She is a true cookie aficionado.
3,000 cookie cutters.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's amazing.
That's a lot.
So Joel in Connecticut, my go-to Christmas cookie is from the radio NPR series, The Delicious Dish Recipe from Sweaty Balls. I think we have...
We do.
We have
Unfortunately,
some sound.
We do.
And this is from an SNL sketch featuring Anna Geister and Molly Shannon, and they are playing mild-mannered NPR hosts, and they're interviewing Pete Schweddy, Alec Baldwin, about his famous holiday treats.
Please welcome the owner of Season's Eatings, Pete Schweddy.
Hi, Pete. Well, Pete, Terry and I have been looking forward to having you on the show because we know you're the master of all kinds of Christmas goodies. Tell us about them.
Well, there are lots of great treats this time of year. Zucchini bread, fruitcake. But the thing that I most like to bring out at this time of the year are my balls.
Speaking of balls, There's also snowballs and Russian tea cakes. That's Will and Redding. Those are his go-tos.
And we've also
support the programs you love by becoming a GBH Sustainer. Sustainers make easy monthly donations that keep the news you trust on the air, month after month, year after year. Enrolling is simple at gbh.org/sustainer.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Carr Financial Group, independent fiduciaries committed to guiding investors through the changing economy with wealth management, financial, and retirement planning services. Consultations can be scheduled at carrfinancial.com. And Beacon Circle patrons Ingrid Chung and Michael Obuchowski, celebrating 13 years since they first met. Proud to support GBH 89.7 and the commitment to local, national, and global journalism that inspires, engages, and supports diversity in the community.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Porch Pirates and You, next on the third hour of Boston Public Radio on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPO.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President-elect Trump's nominee for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth returns to Capitol Hill a day after an apparently optimistic meeting with at least one Republican critical to his confirmation. Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa has described her meeting with Hegseth as productive. Hegseth has been defending himself against allegations of sexual assault and excessive drinking. He's also under scrutiny for publicized criticisms of women in combat roles. Senator Ernst, a member of the powerful Armed Services Committee, is a combat veteran and a survivor of sexual assault. Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard has also started lobbying senators to support what could be a contentious confirmation process for Director of National Intelligence. Ahead of her meeting yesterday with Senator Lindsey Graham, the military veteran defended her record.
My own views and experiences have been shaped by my multiple deployments and seeing firsthand the cost of war and the threat of Islamist terrorism.
Gabbard's under scrutiny for previous remarks that supported Russian propaganda, as well as her 2017 meeting with authoritarian Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. 2 days ago, Assad was ousted and fled to Moscow. NPR's Ruth Sherlock recently crossed from Lebanon to Syria, where she found more people trying to get out than in.
The access road to Lebanon is gridlocked with traffic. Some people are walking along the side of the road carrying suitcases and children. Others are sleeping in the dirt on the side, on the banks on the side of the road. Many of those trying to escape are from the Syrian minority sects, like the Alawite sect, the same sect as the regime of President Bashar al-Assad. Now that an Islamist insurgency is in Damascus, they live in fear for their lives. Many here are poor. They say they have nowhere to go, but they feel that crossing is the only way to try to keep themselves and their families safe. Ruth Sherlock, NPR News, Lebanese-Syrian border.
In the latest case involving AI chatbots gone rogue, NPR's Bobby Allen reports a Texas family is now suing a chatbot creator over allegedly abusive and violent responses.
Character AI develops chatbots popular with teenagers. They're known as companion bots. You can customize their names, avatars, and help shape the bot's personality. But a new lawsuit says the Google-backed chatbot encourages teens to carry out self-harm, and in one instance, allegedly hinted that a teen should murder his parents. The defective product lawsuit is seeking damages and asking that Character AI's bots be taken off the market. Character AI said in a statement that it is working to limit teens' exposure to sensitive or suggestive content. Google, which has invested billions into Character AI, said it does not own the AI firm and that user safety is among its top priorities. Bobby Allen, NPR News.
This is NPR.
With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Clarke Lamolt. Major changes to the state's shelter network take effect today. The move from the Healy administration means there will be a 2-track system, with some families put on a rapid shelter track where stays are lengthened to up to 30 days. They'd previously been limited to 5-day stays. Other families will be put on a so-called bridge shelter track where stays are capped at 6 months, compared to the previous 9-month limit. Joyce Tavin is head of the Massachusetts Housing and Shelter Alliance. She says shelter situation has had cascading effects elsewhere.
when you have high homelessness, that drives up your emergency health care costs, your other emergency service costs, addiction services, everything in terms of emergency resources becomes more costly.
Nearly 4,000 families have exited the Massachusetts shelter system over the last year. A pop-up installation meant to raise awareness about disability stigma went up in Boston City Hall Plaza today. Advocates have set up a large cube on the plaza where people can leave handwritten messages about barriers and discrimination they've faced in their personal and professional lives. Cindy Walker's with Mass Ability, the state agency that serves people with disabilities, and sponsored the pop-up. Walker read the message she posted.
Ending disability stigma brings choice, voice, and validation to so many individuals and communities in the Commonwealth.
Mass Ability was previously known as the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission. Governor Healey says the new name is meant to reflect a more inclusive approach. Cloudy today, some drizzle throughout the day, a high near 40, rain overnight, and it's going to be warm and rainy tomorrow. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Made in Cookware. Made in Cookware is crafted by chefs for chefs and designed for restaurants and home kitchens around the world. Their cookware can be found at madeincookware.com. This is NPR.
Welcome back to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm Boston Globe columnist Shirley Leung with former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral. We're in for Jim and Marjorie today. Jim and Marjorie will be back here tomorrow for December's Ask the Mayor with Mayor Michelle Wu. Hello again, Andrea.
Hello again, Shirley. We are now joined on Zoom by the pride of Dorchester, the man with the magic wall, CNN's John King, anchor and chief national correspondent. Hi, John. It's nice to see you again.
Andrea and Shirley, it's a pleasure. I hope this was a peaceful transfer of power at WGBH.
It was.
To all outward appearances, John, it was. We can't speak to behind the scenes.
So, John, we spent yesterday talking a lot about Trump and his cabinet picks, and there's been a lot of drama over his cabinet picks, whether it's Pete Hegseth or Kash Patel or RFK Jr. And we were just wondering if you see some kind of through line among these nominees. I mean, they have controversial backgrounds, but it seems like they were brought in for specific purposes. And maybe you could talk a little bit about why some of these picks and what is Trump ultimately trying to do here?
It's a fascinating group, and they're all very different, and yet there is a through line. I think you raise a very critical point. They are incredibly different. They are loyal to Trump, and they are disloyal. They are rebels against what they see as an entrenched establishment that has stopped listening and stopped changing. And Washington's having a really hard time with this. Most Republicans are being very muted about it because Trump controls the party now, and they know when they speak out against him, the only thing that happens is they get attacked online. Their office phones ring off the hook. People show up outside their houses. And so most Republicans are being, especially those in office, the senators, for example, who are going to have to vote on these picks, are being very careful, cautious, and muted. And many of them are being quite supportive, even though in private they raise questions about, is RFK up to the management challenge? Never mind his policy views. Is he up to the management challenge of such a big agency? Is Pete Hegseth up to managing perhaps the most complicated agency and the high stakes agency in the United States government? So there are both qualification questions, and then there are policy and views questions. Look, this is proof that Trump has completely remade the Republican Party, and that the opposition is so muted tells you how strong his hold on the party is. The through line, though, is that they are completely different from what you would expect if Nikki Haley had won the election or if Mitt Romney had won the election, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. They're not picking from the normal list. Both parties have a list, and there's always a government out of power. If a Democrat's in the White House, there are a group of Republicans who are in think tanks, or maybe they're working for governors, or they're in the private sector. But that most of them are, the group from whom they will pick if their party comes back in power. This is off the charts, and it's testing the patience of even Trump's Republicans. And I'll close on this. We can talk about any one of them in more specifics. Matt Gaetz obviously had to withdraw. I think it's possible that one or two more might face trouble. But I'm not even sure of that. And if it's one or two more, that will be it because of the loyalty and because of the numbers Republicans have in the Senate. The challenge here is going to become governing. What undid Donald Trump the first time? The failure to govern during COVID, the failure to help people and to use government effectively to help people during COVID. He's going to get most of his picks because he won the election and his base is incredibly loyal to him. My question is, can they govern? Can they do the jobs? Will they surprise us? For the ones you look at and you say, that person does not have the management experience, even if I disagree with their policy. Can they just run the place? I think that's going to be the big test. Can they govern if and when, and we know it's a when, some crisis emerges?
But what about the Senate? So essentially, the muted response that you're talking about, or just sort of the whispering behind hands about the concerns about certain of his picks, are they genuinely willing to abdicate one of their fundamental responsibilities of advice and consent in order to approve his nominees? And I'll ask you the question also that I asked Charlie Sinnott earlier this week. With the most recent developments in Syria, they should at least have brought this into sharp relief, the need for highly qualified people to be able to meet the moment whenever the moment happens. Will that have any impact on the Senate's backbone to do their job?
It's a fantastic question. And you see even, Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, a Republican of Iowa, someone who served in combat, a woman who wore the uniform. We should all be grateful, whatever your politics, for her service. A big advocate for women in combat. And Pete Hegseth has several times said he doesn't think women are up for that. He seems to be moderating his views on that issue. They keep saying they will respect the process. What they're going to say, Andrea, is that we had hearings, we asked tough questions, but the president won the election, and even if we disagreed with the answer, as long as they don't say anything that in their view disqualifies them, they will get the votes. I think the burden here is even going to be higher on the Democrats because the Democrats are outraged at a lot of these picks, but can they ask substantive questions and not just roll their eyes and not engage immediately in combat? But what you're going to hear from most of the Republicans, and it'll be interesting, they did sign up for FBI background checks now. There are meetings in private, and there are some in the Senate who say we do have to prove we have some spine, but I don't think there are enough of them. I honestly don't. I think that you see, the way you see Hegseth now they're saying, well, okay, so he had troubles 10 years ago or 12 years ago or 15 years ago, but he's a different man now. And we should all forgive people for mistakes. The question is, at what point are certain mistakes disqualifying, at least for a very long time? But I'm rambling a bit because I don't know the full answer to your question, in that in private conversations, you have a number of Republican senators saying, oh boy, we got to find a way to expose this, to air this out, and maybe that will convince enough of us. But I just don't see it happening because of Trump's grip on the party. This is a very different environment than when he was first elected. The party then was still skeptical of him. At least half the party was opposed to him. The piece of the party that is in power, that has jobs, not the Liz Cheneys, not the people on the sidelines screaming, the people who actually have jobs and votes. And the House is totally pro-Trump, with one or two exceptions. The Senate, there are still some people more on the sidelines, or more whispering and quiet. But let's just see. I always make this joke, and it's not really a joke, that the biggest thing in the Republican Party since Trump has taken power in the party is this scarless spine removal. That these guys have no. You can see no evidence of the surgery, and yet
right. They've lost their spine.
They went from total anti-Trump to whatever you want, sir.
Yeah. I was reading this story about President Biden and how he's shrunk. He's really disappeared. He's got about 40 days left in office. He's avoids all unscripted moments or press questions. And I actually didn't. It didn't occur to me. Like, you're right. We haven't seen much from Biden, except for when there was that crisis in Syria, he did step out. We actually have not seen much from Vice President Kamala Harris either. So is this? Part of me, when I was reading this story, is like, well, maybe Americans don't want to hear from them. A lot of Democrats are so mad. But is that what should they be doing? Should they retreat, or should they be out there, warning about Trump?
I think there's two different challenges there. They lost the election, so I think warning about Trump, unless you're very specific, would sound like sour grapes at this moment. And I think President Biden, to his credit, having come into office without a peaceful transfer of power, with Donald Trump fighting it to the very end, he has decided to say, we know he doesn't like him, and I'm being polite. We know what Joe Biden thinks of Donald Trump, and yet he's going through this according to the playbook, right? You come for lunch. Our people will cooperate with your people. We're going to do this the right way. He is honoring the country, honoring the Constitution, and honoring tradition with a man who doesn't care about tradition and often doesn't seem to read the Constitution. So you have to give credit to the president in that way. We do only have one president at a time. That's a cliche, but it happens to also be true when you have crises like this. And so you do see, you're right, he came out and spoke on Syria. We haven't seen him much at all. Behind the scenes, they're trying to get the cement to dry on some Biden initiatives that they know Trump wants to uproot. So there's some manufacturing money from the CHIPS bill. There's some infrastructure money for roads and bridges. They are trying to do everything they can legally possible to get that money out of Washington bank accounts and out to the states or out to the companies or out to the businesses. Get it out so that Trump can't take it back. So that you have some 20 years from now, you can say Joe Biden did that, and you don't see evidence of it today. In terms of being president day to day, what he said on, they're trying, can they manage to the degree, how much control do you have over Syria, but can you manage, can you get the Israelis to pull back? Can you, I think the president made a very valid point that, for all the chaos and a lot of the anger aimed at Netanyahu, if you look at the big picture, this has not been a good year for Iran. This has not been a good year for Iran's proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah. And I think President Biden's trying to take some credit for that on the way out the door. The vice president has a very different challenge. What does she want to happen? What does she see as her future? There are a lot of Democrats who hope she goes away because she lost the election. They blame the president more than they blame her. But they just think the party needs to go through a whole new revolution and evolution of talent. Sure, if you want to go run for California, go do it. She has to make a decision. Yes, she lost the election. She only had 110 days to run. She does have a big fundraising list. She is an African-American woman in a party whose biggest foundational element is the loyalty of African-American women. Does she want to run next time? She's got a lot to learn. She has a lot of lessons to scrub. She made a couple of big mistakes. Most of this was on dynamics out of her control. I'm not going to pick on her for it, but she did make a couple of unforced errors. So she's not going to make that decision before Joe Biden leaves office and Donald Trump moves back into the White House. But that's something that'll probably take her months, if not a year or more, to make. But in the meantime, she needs to protect her options, if you will. And so I think that she is understandably even more cautious than the president right now because she's thinking, 4 years down the road. Joe Biden is thinking, what can I do so that when the historians write the books in 10 or 20 years, I look a little bit better?
John, this is something that drives me absolutely crazy. And to your point about the fact that there's only one president at a time, what do you make of the fact that it's pretty frequently reported about Donald Trump's conversations with and outreach to foreign leaders? Elon Musk talking to foreign leaders, the two of them are still private citizens. And it's not like I expect outgoing President Biden to do anything about that. But what's your take on it as a political correspondent? And it's essentially the breaking of yet another norm, the failure to have any respect for the end of a previous president's term and sort of, furthering your agenda and your interests as a private citizen, which is actually a violation of the Logan Act, right?
Right. So I think it depends would be my answer. We've never had this before. He's a former president coming back into office. Right. So he does know a lot of these leaders. He is going to take office at a time of enormous challenge around the globe. And so I don't begrudge Donald Trump. He wanted to go to Notre Dame to see Macron and to see Zelensky. I see no harm there as long as he's not doing it in a way that says, Joe Biden's trying to get you to do this. I'm here to tell you not to do it, at least publicly. He can privately do whatever he wants. He's the president. He will be the president of the United States. We've never had this in our lifetimes, not since Grover Cleveland, as the president left office, been in isolation for 4 years and then come back. And, that was not in the social media and the TV and the digital age. So I do think you have to give him some grace that he is going to have the job in 50 days, less than that. It is an incredibly complicated time in the world. And he was president of the United States just 4 years ago, and he knows a lot of these people. I think what he says publicly about those conversations is the test, because you're right. He has a history. We have to judge him going forward. This is a tough one for our job, our business, because we know what he's done in the past. Our job, we get paid to be open-minded and see what he does going forward. His people, a lot of his voters, don't care that you and I think it's a little weird, for the incoming president to be talking to her. They like that he's different. They like that he doesn't follow the norms. They think Washington, the town I work in, is broken and that we need new norms or no norms and let him do what he wants to do. So he did win the election. We need to be careful there. But I think it's more important than who he's talking to is what he says about it, especially publicly. And look, he's not on the ballot. There are some Democrats who think he won't leave office, but we assume this will be a second term and he'll be gone in 4 years. Otherwise, I think there would be conversations about one of the first people you meet is Viktor Orban. Right, an authoritarian leader of Hungary. We know Trump has a sort of a soft spot for people who exercise power in non-democratic ways. The bigger question to me is Musk.
Yes.
He didn't win anything.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up Elon Musk. Yeah, I don't have a problem with Trump.
And he's a billionaire with huge interest before the United States government. And so if he's going to be involved, and the President of the United States has the right to pick his team, especially for jobs that don't require Senate confirmation. But if he's a shadow president or a shadow vice president or a shadow chief of staff, or pick your term for it, I would argue, as someone who's done this for a long time, that we need a lot more transparency about who he's meeting with and a full scrubbing of every piece of business his companies have to do with the government. He seems to think, I'm Elon Musk, Trump's buddy, I can do whatever I want.
Right.
And again, a lot of Trump voters would say, you're all mad about this. This is cool. In the arc of history, I think that could be a place where we need to spend more focus than on Donald Trump being different and kind of Trumpy sometimes.
Or back channels. Just the fact that Musk can communicate things that Trump would never have to admit to communicating. He was at Notre Dame, which he could go, certainly, but I don't think we should fool ourselves that Musk isn't doing anything that hasn't been blessed by Trump.
I think, or at least, maybe if he's freelancing, he's bringing it back into the fold at the next meal at Mar-a-Lago. Look, I think, again, I've said this too many times, I'm a broken record, but Donald Trump, since he came down that escalator back in 2015, keeps taking us to places we've never been. And so there's no rule for this, per se. I mean, all presidents, you go back to read about Jack Kennedy, all presidents have had these outside people because they don't trust the system. You get caught in the presidential bubble. It's a good thing to have somebody who doesn't work in the White House or hasn't spent 25 years in Washington that you can pick up the phone and call. But if that person is actually exercising power, if that person, as we know in Musk's case, is having significant influence over personnel choices, I would argue there should be more transparency. The problem is you have a Republican Senate Majority Leader and a Republican Speaker of the House, and I'm going to say let's have more transparency, whether that's in documents you have to file or come testify before Congress every couple of months so we can ask you questions about your role, question time like the parliamentary systems have, like the Brits, some way to have more transparency. That's what I would say as someone who practices journalism and just as a citizen of the United States. Okay, if you're going to be doing this stuff, we deserve to know about it, but Donald Trump has full control over everything in this town. A lot of people think, the Supreme Court, winks and nods his way too. So I wouldn't bet on it. Again, this is one of the challenges for our business, to fairly and objectively, but aggressively scrub these things as much as we can. And it's going to be a giant challenge for the Democrats in the minority going forward.
So John, you may not know this, but I'm raising a budding John King at home. My 13-year-old, he's a political news junkie, and on election night, this is a true story. He runs in breathlessly towards me. It's probably like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and he's like, "Mom, do you see what is happening in Virginia? Do you see what's happening in the returns in Loudoun County?" He's like, "Virginia might be a toss-up. It's a lot closer. Like Harris was supposed to have this in the bag." And so, and anyway, so I'm reading about now these two special elections in Virginia and in January, and talk about how it's a pocket of Northern Virginia, that's where Loudoun County is, and how Democrats and Republicans are closely watching these the state Senate and House of Delegates races there.
First, let me start with, I love this kid. I don't like to talk about my family publicly, so I don't. You take it as far as you want, because he's your son. But number one, if he's ever in D.C., he should come in and play with the real magic wall. And number two, when I'm up in Boston sometime, we should go to a Red Sox game or something.
Oh, that'd be great. He would love that.
I think that it's great in this cynical time. I think people who care about public affairs in any way, whether they're volunteering to help raise money for a cause. I was listening earlier to the, I forget what they called it in the newscast about, we go right up, talk about, I have MS, right? So I deal with disability issues all the time. And so I think people, if young people are getting involved, amen. Amen. So I applaud him, and I'd love to have a conversation with him sometime. So now this one's over, right? Donald Trump won the election. The Republicans kept the House. The Republicans won the Senate. Democrats actually did okay at the state legislative level across the country. And so what are you doing now? You're trying to figure out, do voters have buyer's remorse? Are Democrats learning the lessons in organizing? So how do you prove that? You look at the next election. So these special elections, you'll have you have a couple in Virginia. I'll get back to that area in 1 second. And then you have some of these House members that Trump is putting in their jobs. Most of them are safe Republican seats. But you're still, to your son's point about the margins in Virginia, right? Harris can win Virginia but it still tells us something about how bad the night's going to be, right? Because how close it was.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens in some of those House districts for the people Trump nominates in safe Republican seats. Are those races closer than maybe we thought? Does a Democrat pull off an upset in those races? Keep an eye on those. But the Virginia area is fascinating because when I came to Washington from Boston 36 plus years ago, Loudoun County was red. That's the place Ronald Reagan won. That's a place George H.W. Bush won. It's a place where George W. Bush won or was competitive the next time. But Virginia has been Democrat for president since 2008. And so when the suburbs got closer again, that told us either Trump was running stronger or Harris was running weaker. You can read that, you choose the way you want to characterize that. And that's the big test, right? Trump improved his standing just about everywhere. With blacks, with Latinos, giant Asian American community out in Loudoun County. Because this was such a big dramatic election, I think one of the underreported stories in America is the Asian American vote it was the reason Virginia switched from first from red to purple to blue. Was the Latino and the Asian communities, big swing constituencies. Critically now in Georgia, as it grows above 5%, by the time we have the next presidential election, probably closing in on 10%. So the new emerging populations and where they are often the swing constituents. So I think Northern Virginia, to me, is what, even though it's become a reliably blue state, has a red governor, just like Massachusetts, is a Democratic state that sometimes goes out and gets a Republican governor. Virginia is one of those states that can still swing purple. So those races, to me, are fascinating for a number of reasons. Number one, are voters looking to kick Trump, send a message to Trump, even right away, that we're still out here. We're going to elect some Democrats because we're still out here. And do the Democrats learn the lessons and learn how to talk to people about issues where they think they might have been talking about those issues in the last election, but they simply did not break through, especially to working class people, people who work with their hands, people who are stressed of living, people who went from COVID hangover to cost of living hangover, who have lost faith in the Democratic Party. Do not think the Democratic Party wakes up in the morning, leaders of the Democratic Party wake up in the morning and say, what can I do for you?
So, John, I think of the value of winning elected office is a lot like buying a new car. Depreciation starts the minute you drive it off the lot. So in the last minute or so that we have here, the midterms are right around the corner, and that's where people show how much depreciation they think is set in, or have voters' remorse or election remorse. Tell us what you think the Republicans are going to need to be careful for, or what they'll be at risk for, and how you think Democrats are going to approach the midterms.
Well, the Democratic part is a lot more complicated. If I have a minute left, we'll leave that. But I think
okay, we'll get you the next time on that one.
But they need to listen on blue collar issues, and they need to organize better. But mostly it's listening. You only learn when you're listening, and they clearly have a lot of listening to do, especially to working class people across the country, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of where they live. They need to listen to those people. I think you raise a key test for the Republicans. History says the president usually gets thumped in his first midterm. It just always happens. So if Donald Trump, people want the cost of living to go down. That's why the Democrats lost this election. If Donald Trump imposes his tariffs, right now he's throwing out these big numbers as a negotiating tactic and a bluff. That's what he does. He didn't follow through in anywhere near what he promised in the first term. But if you do have some of those tariffs, if you do have mass deportations, what's the impact on the economy? That disruption, right? People are expecting things. Look at the polling now. People already psychologically think the economy is going to get better once Donald Trump takes his hands off the Bible. If it doesn't, Republicans will pay the price. And if you look at the House margin and the Senate margin, they're pretty narrow. They're pretty narrow. The House map will be favorable to the Democrats in the midterm. The Senate map's a bit more of a toss-up, but the Democrats will have an opportunity. There are governor's races out there that matter as you get into these things. So that's the first test. That we're in this age of the pendulum swinging. And if you think Trump was just president and then Biden came in, maybe it didn't swing that much. But if you assume Trump is actually going to leave after 4 years, this is the test. Is Trumpism the new Republican Party, or is he a one-off? Is it all about him? And when he's gone, the party changes again. Some of the first clues of that, and I think as importantly, have the Democrats learn the lessons, will come in those midterm elections. And a lot of voters out there are saying, oh my God, we just had an election. Can you shut up for a little while? But I'll close, and I get it completely. I get it. But the parties get going right away with candidate recruitment and fundraising. And I'll close on this point because it's where we began. A lot of Republicans who don't have the courage publicly to say some of these cabinet picks they don't believe are qualified, not up to the job of doing it, that's what they're worried about. That they get into these agencies, especially, the Pentagon is something that can cause a global crisis, but these healthcare agencies that can affect people's lives like COVID did, that if Trump's people are not up to the job, and that shows in the first 2 years, watch out for the midterms.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. So
always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And John, my 13-year-old, he's an 8th grader at BC High. There's a field trip to DC in March.
I'm serious about
really?
this. Let's make sure that we, at some point I'm going to have to step aside. So now that I know the heir apparent, we can have a succession plan.
Thank you, John.
We've been speaking with CNN anchor and chief national correspondent, the pride of Dorchester, John King. Thank you again. Coming up after a quick break, we'll open the lines to get your thoughts on the Grinches of the season, porch pirates. How do you handle them? From horror stories and techniques. The Porch Pirate and You is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the BPL and streaming at YouTube.
This week, we're bringing you stories of people staying active as they age. We visit a gym where older athletes say that strength training improves their quality of life.
Now I carried 4 quarts of milk. That is miraculous. What it was to me.
I'm Juana Summers, active aging, on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Babson College, where you can earn a part-time MBA for your full-time life at the school ranked number 2 best college in the U.S. by the Wall Street Journal. Graduate courses offered online or in person with remote options. babson.edu/part-time. And Beacon Circle patrons Ingrid Chung and Michael Obuchowski, celebrating 13 years since they first met. Proud to support GBH 89.7 and the commitment to local, national, and global journalism that inspires, engages, and supports diversity in the community.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio.
That was me struggling with my headphones and got the microphone in the way. Literally couldn't open them to put the headset on to welcome you all back. But in any event, welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live from the BPL, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm Andrea Cabral, in with Shirley Leung for Jim and Marjorie today. They are both back tomorrow with Mayor Wu. The New York Times is reporting that holiday spending is expected to reach a record high of $902 per person, with almost 60% of adults buying things online. More and more of that stuff goes mysteriously missing. Something like 120 million packages. 120 million packages were stolen off of American porches and front stoops last year, according to one survey. So for the remainder of the show, we're opening the lines to you at 877-301-8970 to get your thoughts on the Porch Pirates hell-bent on ruining your holiday gift giving. And we really hope that while you're texting and calling us, somebody doesn't steal something from your front door. How are you thwarting them? Do you have doorbell cameras, Home Alone-style booby traps, glitter bombs? Do you just take justice into your own hands and have come up with your own elaborate system? Or are you buying into the shipping insurance, which adds $10, $20 to your purchase just to make sure it actually gets to you? Or do you think that that's a bit of a scam? Or hear me out, have you resorted to this tried and true ancient method, getting all of your holiday stuff at that mythical place called a store? 877-301-8970, call or text Porch Pirates and You.
Yo ho ho!
I think we're going to have a number of those kind of sound bites and walk the plank references and, liking the cut of someone's jib. What do you think?
Oh, this was the first year that I actually, I was ordering something online. I forgot what I ordered. This was the last few weeks, and I was getting free shipping, right? And then they ask if I want to buy for $4.95 insurance, and this would protect me against the package getting lost or stolen, because they said that if it gets lost or stolen, you're out of luck, which I'd never heard of. I mean, usually when that happens with Amazon, you just send them an email, or you send someone, someone an email, and they're like, oh, we'll send you another one right away. And so I don't know what it was. Maybe because I already got free shipping, because I was like, well, I might as well just pay $4.95 just to make sure it gets here.
It is true. There are actually a few online places I've seen that actually add a package protection to the cost
automatically.
Yes,
right?
You don't have a choice. You can't sort of unclick it. And I have a problem with that. I have a problem with you deciding for me that I need package protection. It may get lost in the mail, it may get stolen, and I may never call you about it to get it replaced. So I think for some of them, it is a way to continue to make money. But the bottom line is that our growing penchant for online purchasing, that we now have a Cyber Monday. We have a Cyber Week after Black Friday. We like to purchase things online, and because of the fact that we like to purchase things online, they all have to be delivered. It impacts traffic, all the huge Amazon trucks and other kinds of delivery trucks. All of the stuff, we're now recycling boxes at a furious rate because we have to unpack all of that stuff. And part of it is it's created an entire industry for theft.
But I thought that with this working from home trend, you'd think that more people, that people, that thieves would be aware that a lot of people are working from home. So you run a risk of getting caught. My husband works from home pretty much full time. And as soon as the doorbell rings, he's down there grabbing the package.
Well, that's why they've come up with people who will wear like an Amazon jacket to steal, or will wear something that looks like it's from a delivery company, so that and they'll carry a clipboard so that you will believe that they are actually there to see about a package or deliver a package. And they've actually been seen on doorbell cameras picking up the package, and people are less likely to stop someone with that kind of jacket on carrying a package. They just assume that they're in the middle of a delivery.
Should we hear from Heather?
We should talk to Heather.
This is pretty good.
This is good. Hi, Heather.
Hello. Hi there. I can't believe this subject because it just happened to me this weekend. So I adopted a child for Secret Santa, and they had requested a specific item from Amazon, and I had it sent directly to them and had alerted the parent. And she said, it's not here. And I showed her a picture of where it had been sent, and it was the next door neighbors. And sure enough, she went over there on Sunday, and they never answered the door, but she knew that they were there, and they took the package. And so I had to go through and reorder it through Amazon, and I just felt so bad. Just trying to, help them out, and here they got their kid's gift stolen.
That's absolutely horrible. And now she lives next door, and she has to live next door to people that she knows have sort of taken something from her. She's going to run into them eventually.
Yes. I said the same thing to my husband. I said, they have to see these people, I'm assuming, at some point.
Wow,
So,
that's
anyway.
that's really bad. When your next door neighbor is the thief, that's pretty bad.
That's brazen.
Versus it's very brazen versus
really
a stranger.
Brazen. Oh my goodness. But yeah, my husband.
Thank you for the call,
Thank
Heather,
you, Heather.
so much.
Sorry about
I'm sorry you had to reorder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, we order. We have. My husband loves to order. My husband does a lot of the shopping in our household, and so we always have an array of boxes piling up outside our door. And actually, I think about. I don't know how people did it before. I don't know what life would be like without being able to order something online, because I don't have time to shop.
Right. No, it is definitely the way that we get most of our stuff. So in the category of, your own kind of fixes for this kind of stuff, Jeff in Andover says that an Amazon package on the front porch can sure hold a lot of dog waste. So I have a feeling that Jeff may be thwarting porch pirates in his own special way, and I also assume that Jeff has a dog. One of our other texters says, we buy local as much as possible or ship to a UPS, FedEx, or Amazon pickup place. We also grab our neighbors' packages, and they grab ours. We do
that too. Yeah.
Yeah, where I used to live, we took each other's packages in all the time, made sure they weren't in the outer lobby, left them outside each other's doors. He says, we're on a pretty heavy pedestrian street near Central Square in Cambridge, and there are porch pirates everywhere. That's from Dre from Cambridge.
Oh my God. So you can call or text us. What is the number again?
It's 877-301-8970 for your calls or your texts. One of our other texters, Donna, who's on the road, says that she tries to be at home when packages arrive. She likes when she can watch the truck virtually, so she must have sort of a doorbell camera, so she knows exactly when it arrives, and sometimes she'll wait outside. It is very true. You get, Amazon will send you when it is delivered, and they'll send you a photograph of where it has been left,
right.
so you can see if it's your front porch, your back porch, and there are a couple of other places that do that. But that doesn't happen all the time, and not everybody is necessarily getting deliveries from Amazon or places that do that. So you have to be home and on the lookout, or you might lose your package.
So how are you doing your holiday shopping, Andrea?
I still do everything online, but I send it directly to people. I let them know when it's coming. I send them the confirmation.
Are you all done?
Well, mostly I give people money. I mean,
me too.
There are some things I do send. I send to my brother who lives in another state and a few other people. But by and large, I send them the confirmation, tell them to be on the lookout for it. If I get a confirmation, I send it to them and say, it's just been delivered, so go out and get it.
Yeah, I think most of my gifts this year will be in person. You know, I'm not really sending that many gifts, but it'll be in-person gifts to teachers and to family I'll visit on the West Coast.
Woody, who's a UPS driver, has texted us with regard to porch pirates. If you live in the city and in an apartment complex, give your UPS and FedEx driver the code to the building. If you have, and I have seen the requests for stuff like that. And the mail, USPS does it as well. If you have a single family, use a delivery box or put a good-sized planter by the door. We will tuck it behind. Thank you, Woody.
Oh, that's a good tip.
And thanks to UPS.
Should we hear from Mary from Providence?
Hi, Mary. How's Providence doing?
Well, we're doing all right. I've been lucky so far, knock on plastic. My big beef, though, is they ask if you have special instructions of where you want to put your stuff. Particularly Amazon does that a lot. You can write out a very, very specific bit of information, and you come home, and right in front of the front door, I have a front porch, right in front of the front door in full view of every porch pirate is your package. So it's beyond maddening. I don't know why they bother to ask you, because 90% of them pay no attention to it at all.
All right. Thank you for the call, Mary. I have to say, I have left instructions for Amazon, and they have been really good at following them. I mean, they're very simple instructions. You know, I'm not asking them to use a map or anything, but they have been good at it. But I know that there are lots of people where the driver just doesn't have the instructions or ignores them. Let's play a little bit of sound. YouTuber Mark Rober took it upon himself to create some booby-trapped packages in order to punish these porch pirates. Here's the sound of one pirate opening up a glitter bomb package.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
You know where that's from, right?
Yeah,
Home Alone.
Home Alone. Right. No, I think people, as we've been talking about in various contexts today, people have been resorting to self-help to get the relief that they need. You know, everything from vigilante violence to figuring out ways to punish people who would come and steal their things. I just saw a video, or it was on the news recently. There were 3 or 4 girls, I don't know if they were sisters, but living in a house together, and they actually saw this person steal a package. They all ran out of the house.
Wow.
They hopped into cars, as did the thief, and they tracked this thief down.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just remind everybody, have you lost something to a porch pirate? What are your tips for stopping these thieves? Again, the number is 877-301-8970. Again, that's 877-301-8970. Call or text.
Alyssa from New York says one thing that keeps happening to her and her mother is that the delivery drivers from UPS, Amazon, and USPS, they don't ring the doorbell anymore, so we don't even know when something was delivered. Amazon should at least be sending you.
Yeah, I don't think
if you sign up for text, confirmations, they should at least be texting you that it's been delivered. But that not knowing that something's been delivered means that you can go to bed and it's literally there overnight. So I would say, in all of those cases, reach out to whatever the delivery service is and make sure that they know that they can text you, or even if they don't ring the bell, they can text you and let you know and send you and take a picture of it so that you know where it's been left on your property.
Did you see that Congress the Porch Pirates Act was introduced in Congress last year?
Who filed that bill?
I don't know, but it hasn't gone anywhere, though nothing gets done in Congress anyways. But stealing anything delivered by the U.S. Postal Service is already a federal felony, so this bill would extend those penalties to include packages delivered by private companies nationwide. So I like that.
Well, it probably didn't go anywhere because it is a duplication of, theft is generally a state. Interstate commerce is used to deliver packages. They go from one state to the other, so there is some federal implication, but theft at that level is usually considered to be a state crime.
So it looks like Dean Phillips introduced it.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. So call or text us at 877-301-8970 and let us know whether or not you've lost something to a porch pirate. Paul in Worcester tells us that his dog, Pepper the Wonder Dog, just started yelling at the driveway from the window because UPS is coming down the street. She also yells at coyotes and leaves falling. So it's always a surprise when I look at and see what her issue is outside, but my packages are safe. Having a delivery watchdog is a pretty good thing as well.
That's a really good idea.
That is a really good thing. And sometimes they make friends with the delivery people. The delivery people know them and look forward to seeing them. But they're actually a pretty good alert system if somebody who shouldn't be on your property comes on your property.
I don't have a lot of things worth stealing. Basically, I order clothes for my kids.
Well, here's a part that I've never been able to quite understand. I get that, if you steal enough stuff, you're going to get lucky and get something that's valuable. But how many people steal things that are like, a box of incontinence products or something that, when you're in your 20s, you don't actually need. Like you get stuff that you absolutely don't need or don't want. I guess you can always find somebody that'll take it. But it just seems weird to me that you have no idea what it is. There have been people that have specifically been taking Apple products that come in Apple boxes. And so the other caution is that having things shipped in nondescript boxes is a help as well.
So let's hear from Jillian in the car.
Hi, Jillian.
Hi. So I have a kind of a funny story. I ordered something last May and was waiting, and it never showed up. And I called, and everybody said that they delivered it, and FedEx said they delivered it, and the company said they weren't going to send me another package. And a week ago, I went to hang a Christmas decoration on my front door that I never used. And when I opened the storm door, it wouldn't close all the way. And I was like, what is that? And there was my package. That was
So you did get your package.
That's kind of a nice surprise because you had thought it was lost.
And I thought it was lost forever, and I was like, whatever. So I was like, oh, Christmas. It's a Christmas present for me.
That's great.
Thank you for the call, Jillian. One of our anonymous texters says, I ordered an iPad from Amazon and kept a close eye on the truck when it was being delivered, received the alert, ran to the door. I watched the truck pull away, but the package had been ripped open, taped back up, and inside was an empty iPad box.
Wow.
So that's the driver, right?
Well, it could have been anybody, right? No?
Well, she says that it gets delivered. The package is ripped open. He would have known he had delivered a ripped open, retaped package, right?
That's true.
He or she.
Well, I have to say the companies are being better at, really Apple should not put it in an Apple box. It should be an unmarked box. I noticed that a lot of companies are doing that too. In a very plain box. It's not emblazoned, with something, you can't tell it's valuable in there. So,
yeah.
That is the way to go,
Lynn from New Hampshire. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I was calling because I was accused of porch pirating.
Oh, you were? What did you do? How did that happen?
Well, I live in a building. It's a big old schoolhouse, and sometimes the packages will be literally left on the front steps. And sometimes they'll text me because I work at home, and they'll say, hey, can you pick up my package? And I'm like, okay, sure. So I go out one day, and I run out, and I get a package, and I grab it, and I run up the stairs, and I leave it at someone's door. And then the next day, I started getting texts from my neighbors in the building saying, wanted woman.
Oh, my goodness. Did they actually do a flyer? Oh, no.
They sent it to all the texts, everyone's text but me. And I was like, and everyone was texting the landlord back and saying, that's Lynn. She always takes our packages and puts them by our door. But I just can't even tell you what it was like to see a video shot, 2 video shots of me, and he got one where I was in a hurry, and it looks like I'm running.
That's
and then going
amazing.
up the stairs, it was ridiculous. And going up the stairs, it looks like I'm kind of, courting the package, but I was really just trying to manage them because there was 4 of them. So just thought on the note of porch pirating, I just thought, oh my gosh, this kind of just happened to me on a different, maybe lighter note. But
well, I'm glad nothing happened to you. I mean, people should be careful. I know people are upset and there's a lot of thievery, but if you're going to put somebody's face on a flyer and say wanted woman, you better be pretty sure that they did what you think they did.
And I'm very, very petite, and I have very long, like, white hair. And it was really funny because it was so obvious that it was me. And the landlord didn't send it to me. So, so I made a flyer and said, wanted woman. And I have a Chihuahua, and my neighbors wrote on there, yes, and Chihuahua partner in crime.
Oh, my God, they accused her dog as well of being in on it.
Says for fun. My neighbors and I, we did it as in fun. Because my
okay. I thought you meant, okay.
Yeah. No, my landlord was just being, we don't know if he was just having a moment. I wanted to text and say, so, I'm not, what did I do to cross you? But instead I just took it lightly. And yeah, we just made a wanted poster of those shots, and, the dog was in it. But anyways, I just wanted to tell you guys on a lighter note, and I'm going by a UPS truck. They're everywhere.
What was in the package that you were accused of stealing?
I never asked my neighbors. I just put them by their door, and I do it all the time. So now when I do it, I wave to the cameras.
Did they ever apologize, Lynn? Did they apologize to you?
No.
Oh.
No,
see,
not
be
at
big
all.
enough to say that you made a mistake.
I did text in and said, it is sketchy that you sent this to everyone but me, and then 3 hours later, and I kind of got a different version, like there was capital letters that said, and keep in mind this might have been a mistake, but it was so obviously me that it was just, anyways, I just thought it was a little spin on the porch pirate.
Well, don't let something like that keep you from continuing to be a kind person who delivers other people's packages, Lynn. Good for you.
No, I just do a little wave. Sometimes I pat my butt, at the camera.
Well, Lynn, thank you for the call. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So a lot of our texters are giving some, pretty decent advice about how to sort of, avoid some of these pitfalls. One of our texters says that their advice is if you go to a big box store and you make a purchase, make sure that you drive straight home. This person has had the experience of, picking up, a TV or so. I guess it was some sort of large purchase, and then you're running errands. I guess so. You're making stops, and it's in the back of your car, where people can see it and will break into your car and steal it. So you may have to go a little out of your way, but drive it home and deliver it safely to your home, and because it's as much of a temptation outside in a car as it might be on a porch, and people have gotten incredibly bold.
You want to read Frank from Westwood?
Frank says, of course Apple should send their products in unmarked boxes, just like my ED meds. Is that why you wanted me to read that? Because Frank is talking about his ED. Well, thank you for that information. A little too much information, Frank, but we're glad you're getting your packages, whatever they might be.
I'm actually surprised. When I drive around my neighborhood, everyone's ordering stuff online, right? And so there's often, 2, 3, 4, 5 packages in front of people's homes. And I'm actually surprised that more stuff doesn't get stolen.
Me too.
Because it sits there for hours.
Yeah.
Well,
you have to be pretty bold to walk, especially if you're in a neighborhood where it's not familiar to you.
Yeah.
Most people I don't think, steal right in their neighborhood. That one caller's neighbor is the exception, I guess. But a lot of times people go into unfamiliar neighborhoods, so they don't really know who's there, who's looking, who spots them, who might follow them. So that has a chilling effect to some degree. But I wanted to tell you, Shirley, that another one of our texters just wanted to let you know that she's always enjoyed listening to you. She said, however, I felt she showed another side when she told Andrea and the audience that she would pay her son $1 million for him not to play football. I don't think she was kidding, and really any amount of money would be unnecessary. It gave me an understanding of why so many regular working class people are tired of these intellectual Democrats Oh, wait a minute. Is she saying something negative here? It says she loves listening to you. So she's suggesting that you tell your son that he simply wasn't allowed to play football. I'm sorry. I thought that she was saying that she thought it just showed, which I did as well, thought it showed a great deal of heart for you to say to your son, I'll pay, this is how much I love you.
Yes,
I'll pay you $1 million.
That was my intent. I'll pay you $1 million because my son has no idea. He's
right.
a kid. He doesn't. I always say yes to my son, and
right.
this is the one thing that he really, really wanted, and it's the only way to break through to an 11-year-old to be like $1 million. Of course, I don't have $1 million. Maybe in Monopoly.
But he got
money.
it. He got how serious you were and how much you love him, which is exactly the point.
That was the point. And I think we have Jared Bowen.
We do have
Zoom.
Jared. Jared is here to tell us what is coming up on the Culture Show. Hi, Jared.
Hi, both of you. How are you doing?
Jared, do you know what I have for you?
Do you have a holiday card?
I have a holiday card for you.
Oh my God!
Wait, let me show you. See, I have a holiday.
Because I was thinking after I should have texted you my address.
I
yesterday.
have a holiday card, but this is from 2020.
Okay. That's all right. I'll take it.
I don't have the new ones yet.
It's probably good I didn't text you my address because then the porch pirates would hack it and then steal whatever's coming to my home.
I should mention Amy, a neighbor of mine, Amy, after listening to us, she decided to drop off her holiday card. A neighbor. So I owe her a holiday card now. Anyways, Jared, what's on your show?
We have a really fun show. As always, I'd like to think. First of all, we have Dale Stefanos, local artist who is responsible for the Betty White postage stamp that is coming our way in early 2025.
I didn't know she was getting a stamp.
She's getting a stamp, and how fabulous. He is such a great portrait artist in particular, and so he was commissioned to design this stamp, so we'll talk all about it.
Wait, he has a famous wife.
He has a very famous wife. Her name is Maria Stefanos, a fellow Emerson alum. And so she
anchor of Channel 5, right?
Channel 5, and she factors into the Betty White portrayal. So tune into the Culture Show, you'll find out how. And then we have one half of They Might Be Giants. They are headed this way for a big series of concerts at the Orpheum this weekend, so we'll talk to them. They have been going strong for many decades. We'll talk about that. And then the Museum of Fine Arts has a really beautiful Georgia O'Keeffe and Henry Moore show, two artists who were big in the 20th century but actually never met, but seem to carry the same themes and the same artistic and aesthetic perspective despite living in New Mexico and on the outskirts of London.
We talked to you about that exhibit a little while ago, and it just seems that's what like when I think of the term symbiotic relationship. That's how I see that. They didn't know each other, didn't meet each other, and there it is. Thank you, Jared. We'll look forward to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Good luck in your show. So I think that's a wrap.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening to another edition of Boston Public.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show. Next on GBH.
And we've got one for you. We'll send you just what you need to get going right away for just $10 a month. And that makes you a sustainer here at WCRB, keeping the music strong and vital. Or you could do it at $120 all at once. Just say Babel. We'll know what you're talking about. 888-995-9272, classical.org.
And just a reminder that we are closing out the hour soon, and we still need to raise now just $1,100. What part of that can you help with? Again, that's $1,100 in the next few minutes. Make your contribution right now at classical.org or by calling us at 888-995-9272.
Support for WCRB